Well, welcome everybody. Sorry for the challenges that we had getting started today. We haven't had problems with Zoom in the past, but I don't know what we did to the bridge today that made it so difficult. But glad most of you could join. Next slide, please. Next. And just want to call out again, Creeds. This is, if the COVID wasn't around, this is where we would be meeting. They're a wonderful coffee slash dry cleaning slash takeout establishment who continues to be open through COVID. So please, if you're in the area, go out, support a local business. They are fully operational.
So as I think Yuntan, is that your name? As he pointed out, yes, we used to hold these in person in downtown Toronto. So this is where we used to do it.
Or this feels is like absolute ages ago.
I don't know, feels like it.
It's actually my son's name. I just don't know how to change it.
Nice.
My name is Itai.
Itai, okay. So as Itai was referring to, yeah, this is where we're holding it downtown. We've held it in a bunch of locations, but this has been our most permanent one. Okay.
Yep. Cool. And very quickly about ourselves. So first and foremost, like who the hell are these guys talking today? We are real estate investors. We've been doing this for a long time. This is I'm coming on my 20th year in real estate investment now. And everybody on the team has tons of experience. We've won a bunch of awards, but there's no point in me kind of reading through this because really, what do they mean if we don't know what we're talking about? So let's actually get into the content today. And you can listen to what we have to say. So next slide, please. Oh, just a quick reminder. Any of our active clients who are not on the Mastermind chat group, who want to be on the Mastermind chat group, please reach out to us either in the chat box or you can reach out to Shelby. Just in case we've missed anybody, because people are joining our client roster quite frequently.
And what is this?
Oh, this is basically it's a chat group for all our active clients. So it's a bunch of crazy investors where we talk about everything investment from, what do we think's happening with, rents over the next couple of months? What are people's mortgages looking like these days? To, oh my God, I've got a raccoon in my house. How the hell do I get rid of it? It's like a support group for all our clients.
Yeah, this is basically our version of AA.
Yeah, Investors Anonymous.
Ming, don't lie. It's full of big fish who will 100% fund your projects with 3% private mortgages. Just advertise that.
Right? Yeah, and Vinay is actually that big fish. That's what.
100% LTV, right, Vinay?
120. I'll pay for your renos as well.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
he's getting better.
No, but this is valuable. So if you are one of our clients and we haven't added you quite yet, this is going to open some doors for you, and this is going to provide you with arm you with some tools and knowledge. So be a part of it. If you're qualified to be a part of it because you're one of our clients, reach out. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's dive into the market minute. So there's a bunch of new people on the line today. So let me just briefly explain how this works. I like to talk about what's happening every month, kind of what's happening in the market, and take it at a macro level. So what are we looking at across the GTA? And then drill down through our own data as to what that actually means, as an individual investor, because I'm sure you've heard the saying before, all real estate is local. And while it's interesting to know what's happening in terms of averages and gives us a general direction, we really need to drill down into more specific data to really understand what's happening. And so we'll do this on a couple of occasions just to understand exactly what's going on right now in the market. So no surprise here, sales volume continues to be leading. If you look at the November numbers that we have here, we're still considerably higher year over year from the previous 3 years. Next slide, please. And also no surprise, resale home prices continue to be high. Now, if you look, November slightly, I'd say petered, I don't know what the right word is, but slightly diminished compared to October. And what that's actually being driven by is condo prices have dropped. even though we're seeing a significant increase in single family homes. And those who are familiar with me, my mantra is always like, the information and the headlines tell you just the tip of the iceberg. You really have to drill down behind what each of these numbers mean and what the headlines are to actually understand like what the data represents. Because you could look at this and say, oh, November prices look like they've come down, great. But if you're looking at buying, I don't know, a triplex or a fourplex or a laneway potential house, this is absolutely not your reality. Those housing prices have skyrocketed in the last couple of months. What's really come down is condos, especially the very small condos. So let's go to the next slide. You'll see here, the reason we have new listings here is because we want to understand, are prices being driven by lack of supply or greater demand? We want to try to start drilling down further to understand what's causing those price numbers that we're seeing in the previous slides. So we care about new listings because we want to know how much supply is basically available. And we can see that there is actually a pretty high supply here, especially compared to 2019, 2018, which I would use as kind of previous year benchmarks. 2017 was a bit of an exception because that's when we had those major rule changes from the provincial government at that time. So if you look, November was actually pretty high in terms of new listings. So if you go to the next slide, this shows our ratio of sales to listings. So the higher the number, the higher number of sales we have to available listings. And so this is quite a strong number. So you can see that while supply is pretty high, demand is even higher for what's there, and it's causing this sales to listing ratio still to be quite high. Next slide. So this is some rent data. So kind of switching gears into what we're seeing in the rental market. I'm sure people have seen the headlines, oh, rents are down, rents are down, rents are down. And while that is true, I think it's much more important to understand what rents are actually down. Because I think it's a great headline to say, oh, rents are down 20%, or rents are down 30%. Like, who doesn't want to click a headline like that? So that way they can get paid for that click. What really is happening is we're seeing rents decline in very specific areas of the city. So it's a little hard to see on this map here, but right in the downtown core is where we're seeing the biggest hits. That minus 22, minus 18% year over year. So this is November to November, rent changes. But if you look just outside of that core, so if you followed Volition for a while, one of the things we talk about is, condos are perhaps a good place to get started in investing, but really where you want to get to is land acquisition, multifamily investments, some of these more sophisticated models that we use. And the neighborhoods that we've talked about, ad nauseum here are, your Dovercourt, Wallace Emerson, your Annex on the west side. And you can see those rents have, they have gone down, but significantly less than what we're seeing in a core. We're seeing, -3, -2, -5, even in Parkdale, -7. And so, these rents, that's more of the reality of what we're seeing. And, anecdotally through, the properties that we're renting out for our clients, this is more what we're seeing. It's taking a little longer. They're not renting out in 48 hours or 1 week like they used to during a hot rental market. They're taking a little bit longer. But the rent prices themselves haven't been as depressed as people are saying. And even on the east side, when we kind of look at East York, we're seeing again -9, -6. They're not the -20, 30% that we're seeing in some of these headlines. So the exodus that everybody's talking about that's happening from the city isn't an exodus from Toronto. It is an exodus from small spaces. People don't want to live in 400 square feet, 500 square feet, because they have to work at home now. They're looking for more space, but they don't want to go live in the countryside and, live on well water and some systems. They just want to live in a bigger property. And so the exodus is from the downtown postal codes, where we're seeing these condos kind of empty out and then people kind of moving into, larger homes. Next slide, please.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to interject quickly here. So in Toronto, as investors and as landlords, we've had it very, very good over the past 5, 10, 15 years. Like we could have our pick of the litter, right? Like it was like, you know, I was like the really good looking guy who in like a flock of girls, just like, right?
Still am, Matt.
Still am, yeah, right. No, but the point being is that we'd have your pick of the litter. It wouldn't, you know, I would have places rented in 24 hours, 48 hours. I would have multiple applications. I would have people in bidding wars, right? In the type of properties that we have and locations we have and the product that we offer. That may not be the reality anymore, right? So while if rents go, like if supply is increasing and demand is decreasing, that's what's happening to the market as a whole. There's a lesson to be had here where any one particular property can buck that trend still, right? Which means you just need to work a bit harder. Like I admit, I could snap my fingers before and I'd have my property rented. And in fact, I probably get more rent than I think I deserved for my units. That's not the reality anymore. It just means that, you know, you have to go back to the basics now. You have to take better photos. You have to be more responsive. Your ads have to look better. You have to know how to write some good copy. You have to be, you know, like a lot of those types of things. So
I would even add on to that, Matt, because, you know, it's not like we have to not work harder. We just have to work normal.
Yeah, fair enough.
This is what everybody else had to do who wasn't operating inside the GTA, right? Like if you were, you know, I'm about to speak on an Edmonton panel later. If you're investing in Edmonton, this is what you had to do because rents go up and down all the time there, right? It's part of the, you know, the natural flow of rent prices. And, you know, you have to become a good landlord in that sense, a good marketer in that sense. And that's just doing normal work out there.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, I just wanted to quickly interject with that point. You know, this is market data and, you know, market is the market. It's kind of like a snapshot of everything. But how I run my properties doesn't mean that my rents are going to drop like this. You know, if I'm smart about what I do, then I don't have to necessarily follow this trend, right? So just something to keep in mind.
Yep. And, you know, I think that for those of you who were on some of our, you know, previous meetups, we had talked about some of these alternative strategies that we've been using. You know, I flipped to what would be called a medium-term rental strategy for my properties that are outside of the downtown core. And they've actually, you know, this year they will have performed their strongest financially. When everybody else is kind of complaining about rent prices, we changed strategies. And yeah, it turned out to be pretty successful. So anyway, next slide, please. So the rental forecast. And what I was really interested is what is the methodology that, so this is from rentals.ca. It's a great site. They've got lots of kind of analytics behind renting. But I was interested in what the methodology was. And basically they're looking at predicted rental demand to understand where this forecast is coming from. And I think it's really interesting because almost across the board there, you see an increase in rents moving into 2021. And this is being primarily driven because the fundamental of the supply that's available, you know, especially here in Toronto and other cities, and the demand of that rental housing hasn't changed. The pandemic may have shifted people around within the city. It may have even pushed some people out a little further into the suburbs. But when COVID is gone, and it's not an if, it's a when, and people start returning to offices and people start, you know, wanting to get together for meetings because it's a hell of a lot easier to whiteboard an idea than it is to try to, you know, get it working over Zoom. When people start commuting again, they will not want to have a 2-hour commute or 3-hour commute or whatever it happens to be. They'll want to return to convenience, and this data supports it. So, you know, we are looking at a 4% recovery across all of Toronto. by November. So this is, I think, it's a great thing for us to see. An interesting data point, I think, for us to keep an eye on as we move into the new year.
Too bad you won't actually be able to raise your rents by 4%, but that's a different story.
No. Cool.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. So then the market data. So what we actually like to do. So that's interesting, kind of high level data, and I call it high level because we're still looking at Toronto as a whole, and anybody who lives here or anybody who knows Toronto can tell you that High Park is not the same as Regent Park, is not the same as Moss Park, right? They're all quite different places, and there's no average of what's happening between those neighborhoods. So what we do is we actually look at data at a postal code at a TREB neighborhood by TREB neighborhood basis, because that's the most granular we can get that data. Thanks, Matt. And so this allows us to run some better analytics against what's really happening out there. So if you go to the next slide. So if you look here, this is what's happening to the downtown single family detached. And this is not average. The average is not helpful, because if there's lots of cheap houses that sell in 1 month and then the next month there's lots of expensive houses, that plays with the average. We like to look at what's called the home price index, and the home price index tracks like for like properties. So what is a 4-bedroom detached home going for? What's a 3-bedroom semi-detached home going for? And we track that data month over month, neighborhood by neighborhood. And if you see, this, for those who've been on the call for the last couple of months, this is a continuing trend that we're seeing. And these are kind of the investable neighborhoods we talk about. So CO1, EO1, so East York, kind of along Danforth, Little Italy, Little Portugal, Corso Italia, the Annex. These are the neighborhoods that we really like to focus on. And these are continuing their upward trends. This has been a pretty strong move since mid 2017, and COVID didn't impact things. Changes in interest rates didn't impact things. It goes to show that when there's a fundamental lack of supply, because there aren't many detached homes, and a ever increasing population, prices do increase. So next slide, please, Matt. And then let's contrast this to everywhere else. That's kind of Toronto. So we can see what's causing kind of the headlines that we're seeing about, price changes or rental price changes or overall flat sales prices. So we're looking at Willowdales, into a bit of Scarborough, Vaughan, Richmond Hill. Next slide. And this is more along the lines of what we're seeing. There was this big spike in 2017, especially in neighborhoods like Willowdale, where tear down bungalows are selling for $2 million, and that did, I'd say, crash down through the 2018, kind of into late 2019, early 2020. And then those markets started to recover again, and we are continuing to see this recovery that's happening in those areas. And this is what we expected. When there's changes in prices, changes in demand, what we see typically happen first is we see it happen in the outskirts of the city. So places where transit isn't as accessible, places where it's harder to get to work, you don't have the same kind of infrastructure. That's where we see more fluctuation in prices. And then the downtown core tends to be more stable. When recovery happens, we usually see it happen in the core of the city along those public transit lines first, and then it starts to spread out to the rest of the city. So we are now starting to see that happen through a couple of these outer neighborhoods.
Yeah, Toronto is very much a tale of two cities, right? Like you can see it through the data, but we know this even just sort of intuitively. If you are, this is part of the reason that the downtown core remains strong is because of rental demand as well. So think of it intuitively. Where does a young professional millennial, where do they work, first of all, and then where do they play, and where do they want to live? Chances are, if you talk to a young professional millennial, chances are it's going to be somewhere in the downtown core, King West, Liberty Village, right?
And I want to contribute to this too, and say that it's not only us who is bullish about the downtown market in the coming few years. Like we see Amazon signing on with new space in downtown. A new head office they just signed a huge lease actually right in the core, along with Shopify. Even though a lot of tech companies initially said in consulting and banking, whatever else, they did say that people are not returning to work for quite a bit. But they're still maintaining their leases. They're still maintaining their space. They have none of these large corporations have gone bankrupt in any way. So I think in the long term, or even in the short term, the next year or so, I can see that a lot of people are going to be wanting to move back downtown because they're going to be working in the core, and it's not just our outlook. It seems like it's the same throughout. We had this first dose of vaccines being distributed in BC and Toronto last week, actually this Tuesday. So we're seeing a progression towards normalcy. Like it's going to take a little bit. I don't expect things to change for the next 6 months or so, to be honest, like until next summer. But when things do change, I think we're going to see a very fast shift. It's kind of like how things happened when COVID first hit. When it first hit, people were scared. I was scared. I thought the world was going to end. I stepped away from real estate for a bit. I started doing other things because I was like, hey, things might not recover for quite a long time. But we saw how fast people adjusted, and we saw how fast people wanted to move out of this city. Within the first 2-3 months, we saw families and individuals who were renting in downtown move out of downtown. Within a couple of months, I think when things become normal and people are forced to return back to work, we're going to see that same trend. We're going to see a couple of months grace period before things get a little bit crazy again in downtown core. Rents are going to go up pretty steadily if someone hasn't secured, so if someone here is leasing and they haven't secured a new lease at a lower rate, we're going to see them having to compete with international students and people returning back downtown. So it's reflective on all markets right now. You look at the stock market, you look at everything else, everything's just trending up. We're at all-time highs over there also. So so back to, I'll let
those are good points. And one thing we're not going to talk about here that we do often talk about is the economic fundamentals. Really, we're not going to get into it today because that's not the crux of today's presentation. Right. But we have spent a considerable amount of time explaining this in the past about how the economic fundamentals that underpin Toronto's market is actually very, very strong. Whether you like it or not, it is. It just is. So you don't have to like it, but you at least have to appreciate it and do something about it. Right? Jump on board and don't just bitch and complain that it's too expensive. Do something about it. Take advantage of the trend.
And I think like Matt said, we're going to talk about the fundamentals on a later point. But I just want to add one more thing: is that when COVID first hit, the fundamentals changed, right? Like everyone has to agree. No one needed to live downtown. Everything was closed. The fundamentals of requiring to work in an office, play, or even require public transit were not there anymore. And that's why we saw people shifting outside. But as soon as those fundamentals return, what do you think is going to happen, right? I feel like it's going to be a no-brainer unless there's some. I feel like it's a kind of no-brainer for most people here, right? It's quite common sense. But anyways, let's continue before we get over our time.
Yeah, sure. And thanks Ed for that. Ed is very active on our team and sees a lot of what's happening. He's our eyes and ears on the ground. So thank you, Ed. And this is what when I talk about the numbers that are balancing out the rise that we're seeing in single family homes, this is where it is. This is the condo market. So we are seeing a drop in the condo market, and in particular, it's actually, while there's been hit across the board in condos, if you look at this data carefully, where we're actually seeing the biggest hit in condos are those that are outside of the downtown core, right? So the C14s, the CO8s, and for those who don't know, that's Yonge and Finch south to about Yonge and Shepherd. So those neighborhoods, they're taking a pretty big hit. CO1, while it has come down as well, isn't as taken a sharp percentage-wise hit as something like CO8. And I do believe this is still related to the proximity of CO1 condos to the things that matter to people who are living there and will matter to them in the future. So access to public transit, access to entertainment, shopping, and then access to their work, which tends to be in the downtown core. So next slide, please. Property Spotlight, over to you, Ed.
Sorry, I was just typing something there. So today's Property Spotlight, it's going to be on a hot topic that's going on in Toronto these days. It's about laneway housing. I'm sure everyone who's done real estate investment or even researched real estate investment in Toronto has seen this topic pop up a few times. And we just want to say it's worth it. Like, it's hard to find. Less than 1.1% of properties in Toronto qualify. There's a lot of bylaws to jump through. It requires quite a bit of careful planning, especially if you own a multifamily already and it's not retrofitted, right? And it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to create one. Anything between $300,000 to $500,000 to create a laneway house. So at the end of the day, is one of these worth it? And we're going to give an example of one of the recent acquisitions we have made for one of our clients here, and you guys can take a look at it. So the numbers here, we're using essentially today's rents. We didn't want to over exaggerate with past rents or future rents because we don't know what's going to happen. But with COVID happening right now, the numbers are a little bit less than what we usually expect. Even though house prices have trended up, we have seen rents go down. So this one specifically, we purchased it for almost $1.5 million. It's 1.45 for a little semi. A good sized lot, pretty deep. And we're putting roughly $1 million in renovations into this project. And the total renovation is going to be roughly 16 months, which includes the planning portion. So this property requires quite a heavy investment. It's not something for the faint of heart. You have to be pretty invested in real estate and be, pretty experienced, I would say, before you jump into something like this. But in the next few slides, you kind of will see that it makes sense and the returns are worth the risk. So if you don't mind going to the next one. So for a property like this, like I said, it's going to be a triplex with a laneway house in the back. In total, we will have 12 beds. So it's a pretty big property. We have 4 bedroom. We have 1 4-bedroom, 3 washroom suite. We have another 2-bedroom, 2 washroom suite. And we have another basement apartment with a 2-bedroom, 2 washroom suite. And finally, a laneway house with a 3-bedroom, 3 washroom, 2-story suite. And we're expecting pretty decent rents. So $4,000 is for the laneway house. That's 3 bedrooms, 3 washrooms. It seems high, but I can promise you in this area where this property was purchased, a single family home that's 3 bedrooms, 3 washrooms, roughly 1,500 square feet above grade will rent for more than $4,000. Unit 2, main floor suite, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. We're using, these 2-bedroom, 2-baths are pretty big. They're roughly 900 square feet. So we could have put a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, but we decided to make a little bit more luxury suites. So we're expecting 24. Realistically, in the normal market, this will rent between $28,000 to probably around $3,000. But we're going to bring the rents down a little bit just so the numbers don't, these opportunities don't come up very often also, but we just want to be a little bit more conservative because we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the next year or so. And lastly, the basement suite, we're underpinning very high ceiling, separate entrance. It's going to have its own concrete patio walking down. And we're estimating around 2,200. Again, a 2-bedroom, very large suite, 900 square feet. It's not even going to feel like a basement apartment. The whole house is going to look like a brand new rebuild, fully stuccoed. Everything's going to be matching. It's going to look quite nice. And lastly, a 4-bedroom, 2-story suite in the house. That's roughly 1,700 square feet, 3 bathrooms with ensuite washrooms and a couple of the bedrooms, walk-through closets, bathtubs. we're expecting around $4,200. So the numbers for rents are not crazy high. With normal COVID, with pre-COVID rents, I expect maybe everything to be the rents to be totaling up to around $13,500 to $14,000. But like I said, we're seeing a 10% to 20% reduction throughout the market. So we'd rather be a little bit more conservative than not. We expect this project to be complete in a year from now, roughly, maybe a little bit less. So by then, hopefully the rents are going to recover. Because this is going to be a legal multifamily with a laneway house, so the property taxes are a little bit higher than what most people are used to seeing in smaller homes in downtown. We're expecting property taxes to be roughly $600 for a monthly. Insurance roughly $300, and water and garbage, waste roughly $150 to $200. Everything else the tenants are paying for.
Yeah, so separately metered right, for hydro and gas, right?
Right, exactly. Separately metered. So as you can see and kind of expect, the cash flow on this property is going to be quite nice. And I know Matt Carr has a few questions. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then, if you don't mind, jumping down to the next slide. So why this property works is once you put this much equity out, you're wondering how do we get it back, and why can we get it back? The rents actually support a much higher purchase price for the end product of this property. So even though we purchased it for $1.5 million, put $1 million in, we're expecting the value of the property to be around 3 to 3.2, probably a little bit higher if you use just purely rents, but we're using conservative numbers right now. And so if that was the case, your net investment in a $3 to $3.2 million property is only $300,000, which is pretty insane, while your cash flow is still around $3,000 a month. And this is using higher than the interest rates that we're seeing today.
Sorry, Ed, how did you get to a net investment of $300,000?
Through an equity takeout. So after the property is done, we're saying that by the time it's complete, with a slight appreciation, we're expecting the property to be valued around 3.2 million.
So there's
so if you're able to take that money back and return the property to 80% loan to value, we should have a net investment of roughly $300K.
Actually, I think we modeled this at 70%, right? 70% LTV.
70%. We might have. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure. The screen says 80%. But I know we were tinkering with the slides last minute, so it might be 70% LTV now, actually.
Yeah. If you get 80, then I get all my money back, and some.
And then some.
and then some. Yeah, if you market it at 80%, you should be able to get a few $100,000 back, actually. But that's usually not possible for these larger properties. It's a little bit harder. It really depends on your personal lending capacity, a debt servicing capacity, and also how the banks appraise these properties, right?
Well, this isn't a problem. We've got Jacob here. He'll make it happen, right?
Yeah. Well, I know appraisers are usually a little bit more bullish, and they're giving us they're appraising properties in the three cap range for commercial mortgages, but then banks are a little bit more stingy these days, especially for residential rentals. But we might see a shift in the next few years. So
just to jump in on that, I was going to say the rents. Like, I'm going to speak about this in my presentation, right? But just to speak to the people who are watching, right? Like, so a property like this with the rental income, $12,000, a little over $12,000, and the mortgage payment is what, 43, 28. So like a property like this much cash flow would actually not hurt your borrowing power at all. So if you could qualify to buy this at $3 million on your next purchase, you would then qualify for $3 million again because the cash flow is so strong on the property. Just thought I'd add that note in there on this project specifically.
So I guess you could just keep rolling this forward. This is a true BRRRR. What do you guys say? Burr.
Rinse, repeat.
It's what Jacob does, especially in where was it again? Hamilton.
Yeah, just down the QEW. If anybody wants to join me.
Yeah. This guy's a pro over there. Mr.
Ed,
Hamilton.
where, generally speaking, without you don't have to be specific, but generally speaking, where do you find properties like this? Where are they located?
So these properties are actually quite hard to find. They don't come up very often in the Toronto markets, at least in the open market. Occasionally, we'll see one on the private too, but we're focusing on the downtown core, especially when we're spending this much in renovations. We really have to make sure the ARV actually makes sense, and also we were able to get the rents, because even though we're say paying a small premium on the lot and the property itself, the renovation costs don't change, and we're spending the same amount in renovations. We're trying to buy as much in the core as possible. This specific property is near Liberty Village. If people who invest in Toronto, you guys are probably well aware, Liberty Village is one of the hubs. A lot of renters, it's very well serviced, and usually has no issues with renting out. It's actually a little bit better than Liberty Village. It's closer to some other main streets in Toronto. So that's why we decided to do one of these larger projects there. Have another couple of these going on with similar returns, and that is why laneway houses are such a huge, a huge investment tool now in Toronto. It's essentially you're able to build a second home on a property and increase your rents much more than what you would have to do if you were to buy another property, if that makes sense. Like I said, you're building a laneway house for $300,000 to $500,000 and getting $4,000 in rent. If you were to buy another piece of land, another property in Toronto, you would not be able to see those type of returns.
Yeah, you can measure that in any way you want. Cap rate, cash flow, the amount of time it takes to recoup your investment, however you want to measure it, whatever measure you want to use. To get $4,000 in rent on a $400,000 or $500,000 investment is unheard of, right? Like and think this is Toronto as well. You might be able to get that type of return or that type of cash flow elsewhere. In Toronto, you can't. Yeah. So, we're really taking things to the next level here. We're really leveling up. We are basically taking this, like, I think squeezing blood from a stone here.
So I think, a lot of hesitation with a lot of Toronto investors is that cash flow doesn't make sense. It never makes sense in Toronto. You can't get the returns here to make it make sense. And what we're trying to show here is that you can. We can show positive cash flow. We can show a proper BRRRR model in Toronto, especially for these smaller scale projects. And we just want to kind of show a few examples. We do have a few more that we can talk about offline if anyone's interested. And the strategy to go about this, it's a little tricky. It does require quite a bit more planning because you are essentially building two homes on one lot. And if you guys want to talk about it, we can talk about it offline.
So this is not easy, and this is not for the faint of heart. What we're trying to do is bust myths, right? There's this myth: Toronto doesn't work. Toronto's too expensive. Toronto, whatever. I just say, well, if you're not making Toronto work, it's just because you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? There are opportunities in Toronto. You just need to know where to look, and you have to have the right eyes You can look at this. You could look at the same property so the reason that this property, that our client is able to take this from end to end, Ed's running this project from end to end for our clients. This one and a few others. That's because when Ed was in front of this property, Ed could see what no one else could see, right? You're looking at the same thing and you see potential where others can't. You see opportunity where others can't. Yeah. And that's where we want to just kind of open your eyes to these possibilities, right? Yeah.
We try to find winners, as what I think one of our clients, Wilbert, is on the line. That's what he says, right? Try to find winners. And this one was a good winner. But yeah, I'm gonna answer a few of the questions on the chat after. Just give me a second. Maybe go to the next slide.
Okay.
I should trademark that phrase, Ed.
Anyone a lawyer here?
All right. So again, the projected returns. We'll just leave it on this slide for maybe a good few minutes. If anyone wants to take a screenshot, we're going to distribute the slides afterwards. But as you can see, the returns are quite good. We have great ROIs. We have great IRRs. Not gonna, go through line by line, but
Yeah, like basically it's like, okay, for the first 16 months, we're going through a reno. It's a long reno, right? The reason it's not easy, like, the BRRRR model, everyone talks about the BRRRR model. Everyone loves using the phrase BRRRR. Every investor and their grandma says BRRRR, right? But we are,
Probably.
sorry, I'm gonna put you on mute. But really, we're taking this and using this and making it work in Toronto, right? Because if you are, lots of investors like to buy a property, they like to do a lipstick makeover and then try to refi it afterward. That model, it's not a bad model. You can do it in Toronto as well. We're trying to show you, if you want bang for your buck, and I mean, this takes a lot of bucks. But if you want bang for your buck, this is the biggest bang for your buck. It's change of use, right? That's the important thing here. We're taking a single family home and then we're creating something special with it, right? Laneway house with an extra unit, 4 separate units, legal. Legal helps you immensely with mortgage qualification, as Jacob will probably get to a bit later. But anyway, so we've got a rental period of 16 months during which you have zero cash flow, right? We know that. But by the time you reach year 2, you're getting cash flow. And this is after you've refied. So I've refied and I'm still getting cash flow out of this puppy, right? And then over the long term, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, we're not gonna walk through this line by line, but just generally speaking, these are very, 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 very good. Cool.
that sounds good. And I think that's basically it for this session's property highlight. I think the next.
Too bad we don't have any pictures.
yeah. Sorry, there's no pictures. The property is undergoing renovations. Well, it's about to start. So there's really no point in showing you before. The after pictures are going to be much more prettier. The whole house is going to look like a new build. It's what we plan to. I think COVID has taught us one lesson, is to create luxury looking units as much as possible. No one wants to live in a small box in the sky. Want to create bigger spaces with good outdoor space, patios in the front and back of the house for each property. Try to make it so that's why we're trying to make it so that the tenants feel like it's home. And ultimately, we should be expecting the same and sometimes even higher rents than some similar condos. Yeah.
Is there? No, I think it was just someone who wasn't on mute. Is there? Do we have time for one question? If you.
Why don't we just do questions on the side and then let Jacob talk?
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll just try to answer a few right now. That was nice.
Okay. No, I think Ming's got a quick plug first. Before.
Well, I mean, what we're talking about here is kind of scratching the surface of some of these, I won't call them advanced, but basically these business models that we use to make Toronto work. Because I think a lot of people see Toronto and they just assume because it's expensive and it doesn't follow a simple business model, therefore it doesn't work. And kind of our mantra that we beat the drum with all the time is you can absolutely invest in Toronto. It may take a little more sophistication in terms of the models that you're using, a little better planning, a little stronger of a team to be able to execute, but you can absolutely do it. And this is how we all invest, actually, personally. Me, Matt, Sam, Ed, we all started investing outside of Toronto, and then we all came back to Toronto as investors personally. So if what we've been talking about so far is interesting to you guys, and you want to understand this at a deeper level, because really we can, in an hour or two, you can only scratch the surface. We are holding a master class on January 30th. So it's a full day event. We do this every year, and there's a little picture of the, almost 200 people that we had there last year. It goes where we answer all these questions that we get commonly, like, how do I start? Like, if I'm trying to get started in real estate, where do I even start? Where should I buy? What should I buy? When's the best time to buy? How do I quit my job? All these, I would say core questions that we get asked, and which I will preview the answer to right now, these are all the wrong questions. So, if you come to the event, you'll learn why you shouldn't actually be asking where's the best place to buy, because if you understand how to analyze fundamentals, you can answer that question for yourself every single time, right? Because it's a different answer for everybody, right? What is the best place to buy for me is not going to be necessarily the best place for you to buy, or for Jacob to buy, or for anybody else, but you should be able to do the fundamental analysis so you can answer that question yourself. And that's really what we teach. There's a quick question, like, is it online? Absolutely, because we are still, in COVID lockdown. And we have an early bird special. I think we're running it till beginning of January, so not too long from now. It's, I think, $99. So, please go sign up. This is not a moneymaker for us. Like, this is not how we, make feed our families. This is really just to help cover the cost is there to help cover our costs, because we've got studios and equipment and all these kind of things that we have to rent out for this event. It's really there to educate. And we got a lot of good feedback from last year's event. So hopefully, people find it helpful and educational this year as well.
So what this won't be a Tony Robbins. This won't be a Grant Cardone. Okay. So this is real shit. This is real. This is nuts. And this is going to be the nuts and bolts of real estate investing. This is not going to be a rah session. This is not a performance coaching, whatever. This is going to be 100% about real estate.
Yeah, and it's not a sales thing either. We have nothing to sell. It's not like I'm going to have some house that I can sell you guys. This is Toronto. Every house that's good that's out there is sold already. So it's not a sales event either. So if you can go to the next page, Matt. Yeah. We're giving away 2 free tickets, a ticket for you and a friend. So if you head over to our Instagram, follow us, like the giveaway post, and tag your friend, you could be eligible to win. Looks like the draw is happening December 18th at 4:30, and we're going on vacation at 5 o'clock. So, so get in before we check out for the winter holidays.
Yeah, come. Okay, so I'm not going to lie. We have an abysmal social presence. I'm not a millennial anymore, so or ever was. So
you never were.
So I don't even know. I don't even have an Instagram account. We are very, very bad at social media. So anyway, we've been told to do some of this stuff in order to increase our presence.
By the younger people on our team.
Yeah. But so come follow us. We're doing our best, and we're going to start posting there more.
Yeah.
So cool. if you go there and you're like, what the hell is this? Don't just bear with us. Okay.
So very, very quickly then, before we cut over to the main event tonight, Jacob and his presentation.
Hold on. Do you have where did people get tickets?
Where do they get? They can go to. Oh, I don't know actually. Shelby, what's the best way
bad we are at this?
The link is in the chat. There you go. The link is in the chat.
Thanks,
See,
Shelby.
we wouldn't be able to run our lives without Shelby.
This is how bad we are at marketing. God. We know real estate, but we don't know how to market. So
yeah,
anyway,
we're terrible event planners. But anyway, if you can go flip to the next slide. So quickly before we head over to Jacob, just exactly who are we? We went through this slide before. We're real estate investors as well. Next slide, please. But if you are interested in working with us, we basically do 4 things. So the first thing is advisory, and that's what's happening tonight. We love to teach and mentor and educate, people about real estate and real estate investing. It's changed our lives personally, and hopefully with the education we can help change other people's lives. So that's the advisory piece. The realty portion of the business is, hey, I need to actually buy one of these investment properties. How do I do that? And we are all licensed realtors. So you would work with one of us to purchase one of these properties. And then you've got a property and you want to know what to do with it. How do I turn it into this luxury triplex, or build this laneway suite, or legalize my basement? Do I have the right side setbacks, head, clearance through doorways, distance to fire hydrants, like all the technical questions that need to be answered in order to have proper legalization of these units. We can do all that. So we actually do the construction. We do the what I call the strategy design for the construction. And we actually execute. So we have a team of contractors who will go out there, swing the hammers, and build these properties for you. At the end, if you like, we can also take over the leasing and property management to make sure that you've got an excellent tenant in there.
So we're the only real estate investment firm in Toronto that does this.
The only one's crazy enough to do all this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a crap load of work. But
it's
yeah,
for businesses.
The reason is because we're not just service providers; we are solutions providers, right? We recognize that, okay, great. If we do some of this mentorship and advisory and education up front, and then be like, okay, you go off and do it on your own, nothing's ever going to get done. Right? It's really, really difficult to execute, even if you have the knowledge. It's not about just the knowledge, it's about execution too. And so, that's why we've integrated all these services with the advisory and, the planning and the strategy that we developed in the advisory phase, and investment realty and renovations and the property management under one umbrella. It's so that you can be successful. We do this for you because we recognize that to go about this in a piecemeal fashion is very, very daunting. So that's why we're here for you.
So next slide, please. This is the updated slide of the team. So these
it's not even updated. We're still missing. We're still missing Brian.
We're missing Brian. So we have a new member of the team, Brian, who's working on the construction side.
So it's not even updated.
It's not updated. We just keep hiring people, but but yeah. So this is the team right now. These are the folks that you'd be working with if you are happening to work with Volition. Next slide, please. This is a reminder that we also do normal stuff. People find it quite surprising that we do regular, single family homes for people to live in. And you get to leverage our expertise as real estate agents, as investors, to make a prudent financial decision for your primary residence. And it goes beyond just like, is this pretty? Is the school good? That kind of stuff, because those things matter for an investor. But it really matters for things like, hey, I don't like this kitchen. I want to flip the layout. Is it possible? We have construction knowledge and background, so we can actually give you an idea of how much it would cost, what would be difficult to do. Can I change those layouts? Can I add an illegal unit into my basement? Does that seem like a possibility? Do I have the right setbacks on the property? So some of the more advanced stuff for your personal residence, you can take advantage of our knowledge and apply it to that. Yeah.
Basically, we do everything that normal agents do, but better. That's basically what it comes down to. So yeah, we do a lot of this stuff, and we sell a lot of properties, and we list a lot of properties for clients as well. All right, let's go.
Cool. And this is, we have this up here because a lot of companies have like vision statements. This is like our vision picture. We really try to break through the confusion and the complexity of real estate investing. When we started out real estate investing, I'm an old man, so none of this stuff existed there. I couldn't go to YouTube to watch videos. I could read books. This sounds like before internet, but it kind of was almost. It was almost 20 years ago now. But I needed something like Volition at the time to help walk me through what I needed to get done and the stages I needed to go through. And that's what spurred this business, because we knew that, we needed each other's help, and that the help we got from each other would be valuable to other people. So
you have to realize, like, you guys are taking a great first step. If this is your first time here, you're taking a great first step in coming out to something like this, because really, if you go online and you read books or newspaper articles or whatever, you're only going to get this much so far, right? But to actually take that and apply it, and to understand what really to do to be successful, you have to be networked with other people who are doing the same thing. You can't be doing this in isolation, right?
I will say over and over again, your network is your net worth. A lot of people use that, but I truly believe it, because you will at some point run into a problem that you cannot find a Google search answer for, or a YouTube video can't answer it for you. And I'm sure I can speak for Jacob as well. He's very well networked, and you don't get to running 40 doors without getting some insight from people who have walked that path before you, right? So your network is really important. So anyway, at the end of this, we'll have the bridge open for networking as well. But I want to get over to Jacob, and I can hear my daughter freaking out in the background, so I also have to get to her.
It's on me.
So yeah. So anyway, next slide, please. So Mr. Jacob Perez, world famous, featured on Realtor.ca. He's been on Matt McKeever's YouTube channel, Andrew Hines show. He's an avid investor in Hamilton. He's been doing it since he was a wee child, at the age of 22. And that's absolutely fantastic. What an amazing success story. And he has over 40 doors now, a long list of venture partners, and he's partnered with Synergy Mortgage Group, who's one of our strategic partners at Volition. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Mr. Jacob Perez.
Wow, thank you. It's the best intro I've gotten before, I think. So that's pretty solid. Can I just share my screen? Is that cool? And I'll load up my slide deck.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a bit of an exit. Like I might have mentioned before, I have to appear on another panel. But thank you very much. And Jacob, we'll have to catch up again another time.
In Hamilton, though, we're not locked down, so maybe we can do a bite in Hamilton or something like that.
That's right. Nice and socially distanced, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Take care.
All right.
Who can share? You should be able to share your screen now, Jacob.
Yep, I'm good there. Can you guys see everything?
Whoa, busy guy.
Oh my God, I'm like 1,000 tabs open type person, so don't mind me. Okay, cool. So looks like I got everything going here. So I guess I'll just slide up in the deck here. Now, when you guys were going through all the data, I thought that was super, super interesting. I mean, I'm a master's in data analytics, so I'm happy you guys mentioned that you have to dig deeper, because pretty much every single headline that we see in real estate, and probably most topics, to be honest, are just, there's really no context, and you got to dig a lot deeper. So, when they're talking about the market or this and that, there's often a lot of misinformation for sure. So yeah, this presentation is really going to be the secrets to maximizing bank financing. And you know what? I feel like this is really obvious stuff, but it's really because I talk about it every single day to all my clients. So I know it's not obvious to everybody else who hasn't maybe spoken with a mortgage broker or been through the mortgage process like 4 or 5 times or things like that. So before I get started, just a quick like high level overview of what we're going to talk about. So the main thing is going to be, how do you set yourself up to buy multiple properties without saving up a down payment slowly, little by little, over and over again, without having to sell off your investment properties, because you usually want to hang on to these things, and how to do it without needing like a $500,000 T4 income or, some kind of like unrealistic income on paper, especially nowadays with COVID and the job market and things like that. So quick thing here on our agenda. So we'll talk a little bit about my mortgage company, how we do things a little bit differently, a little bit about my background, so you know who you're hearing from, then kind of like the 3 critical steps anybody can take to then buy millions in real estate, and then kind of where do we go from there. I'm going to show you guys a really cool case study of one of my favorite clients who used every single one of these strategies and absolutely crushed it. A little bit different market than Toronto for sure, but it's good context and it's a good success story to learn from. So this is our team. That's me and my 2 business partners at Synergy Mortgage Group. So a little bit about us is we're mortgage brokers, but like Volition, we're also real estate investors. So everybody on my team, down to our newest member of the team, our 7th staff member, all have investment properties. Our newest staff member just bought a duplex last month. So it's really important that everybody who's touching your file is very experienced with real estate investing. And when it comes to kind of like the clients that we work with, you won't really see us, waving our hands in the air, waving a flag saying, hey, we have the lowest interest rates. The reality is that all mortgage brokers have access to the same lenders. So we all have the lowest interest rates theoretically, but it's really about who's going to give you the proper strategy so that you can set yourself up to continue to buy over and over. So a lot of the people that we're working with, they're looking to buy 1 to 3, 1 to 5, 1 to 10 properties. Really depends on the market they're in, their goals and ambitions. So about 75% of the transactions we do every year are investors, whether they're refinancing rental properties or buying rental properties. And we've closed over 1,000 rental mortgages. This past year, we did a little bit over 500. So we definitely have the machine built where we can service all these crazy investors across Ontario. And it's really interesting because, we see all these investors like who work with Volition doing these triplex and fourplex conversions in Toronto. We also see people doing similar strategies in Windsor, Sudbury, Hamilton, Niagara. So it's really cool. There's pros and cons to every market. If you're doing real estate investing in Toronto, you might not need 10 properties to retire off of. Maybe you need 1 or 2, and it's actually a lot easier to manage and things like that, right? So you'll see there's pros and cons to every market for sure. So a bit about my background, I was a finance manager at McMaster University. I knew I was always going to go into business. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to make a lot of money. So I thought finance was a good field to specialize in. And, it was really interesting going through university. One thing I noticed was that looking back, there was no mention of real estate investing. So I took an entire business school, all these courses on finance, and nobody talked anything about real estate investing. And I think we've all heard the quote that 90% of millionaires are created through real estate. So it's a pretty big blind spot, I think, in the business schools that this isn't being talked about. So, I did what everybody kind of does. Graduated business school, looked for a job. I took, the first person who would offer me a salary. And this is the big building in Oakville that I used to work at doing marketing. And, I didn't even know what $40,000 was. It was the first time I had a salary on paper. And I was like, wow, that seems amazing. And I remember when my boss told me, our company has this really, really aggressive RSP matching program. And, future Jacob's really going to thank you if you get involved in this RSP matching program. So I thought, what, I want to have a lot of money. Of course, I'm going to contribute part of my paycheck to this RSP matching. And then, what happened was after 1 year, I got promoted with a new job title, but not necessarily with a raise. And they said, we'll talk about your raise at the end of the year. And I had 15 people reporting to me. And at the end of 1 year, they offered me a $1,000 raise. So that's when I was like, okay, this company is definitely not working out for me. So I'm going to look elsewhere. So I actually left the job and I cashed out my RSP. And at the end of 2 years at this company, my RSP was only worth just over $2,400. So that's when I started realizing some of these like traditional investment models maybe aren't as fruitful as kind of they hype them up to be or things like that. So I was like, am I doing the most with what I have? I have some money saved up. What can I do with it? How can I allocate it? So I got on this idea of real estate investing. I don't even know where I heard it from, but I just heard this thing that you only need 5% down to buy property, which wasn't even true, but that's all I heard. I didn't think I needed a mortgage approval. I didn't think I needed a real estate agent. I just went looking at properties. So I ended up leaving my company. I got a job paying me significantly more. I saved up about $27,000 and I decided to try real estate investing. So I walked through a bunch of, 4plexes, 5plexes in Hamilton. This is back in like 2013. And to be honest, I was completely terrified of all the tenants. I was like scared of the tenants. I was like, there's no way I'm buying one of these grungy multiplexes in Hamilton. I'm actually like afraid. So I ended up buying a condo property. So if you look at this property here, I actually bought it with $13,000 down. And my real estate agent, who is the listing agent on the deal, actually said, it's going to rent for so-and-so per month. I wasn't following people who are actually doing it. And it turned out that it didn't rent for as much as the selling real estate agent said it would rent for. And I was actually in a negative cash flow every single month on this property. But, I was living at home, so it wasn't really a big deal. And turned out that I had actually $10,000 left in my bank account. So I went back to this mortgage broker I was working with. I said, could I buy another property with 5% down? He said, yeah, sure. So I went looking and ended up buying another property, which was this single family home that required a little bit of renovation in Hamilton, Ontario. And I bought it for $195,000. And I put about, $10,000 of very light renovation into it. And this one did a bit better than my other property. It actually cash flowed $75 a month on this one. So I was living at home. I was making pretty much negative cash flow for my 2 properties. And I said, okay, well, this isn't really working for me either. So I decided to, buckle down in my career. And I moved to Toronto, moved up the corporate ladder of my company. I did a master's in data analytics full-time while I was working full-time. And, I decided that all my friends were getting jobs at consulting firms. I was like, I don't want to work 80 hours per week and, for $100,000 and have bags under my eyes every day. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to join a startup company, get shares in the company. And then when we get acquired, I'm going to be rich. That's what I was thinking. So I was joined a 4-person startup, and we actually moved to Florida. We moved to Tampa Bay, or just outside Tampa Bay, a place called St. Pete. And we worked literally in a house on the beach, startup style, for a few months. And what happened to us is what happens to a lot of startups. And the startup failed. 8 months later, we just completely went under. And then my life was kind of thrown in a circle because I didn't have a job for the first time in like several years at this point. So what I went back home, 27 years old. I was unemployed, maybe a loser, some would say. And then I moved back in with my parents in their basement. And I was like, I got to regroup. What am I going to do? So I was taking a peek at the real estate market. I hadn't really paid attention to my properties, started collecting rent checks for a few years. And I noticed that this condo went up $100,000 in value. And this house actually went up $200,000 in value. And one of my tenants moved out and I re-rented it for $400 more per month. And that's when I had like my paradigm shift of, oh man, real estate investing is a lot more fruitful than most of these jobs, or working really hard, getting a master's, trying to get a promotion. So that's when I kind of went all in on real estate investing. I started bringing in money partners from my master's program in Toronto to invest with me in real estate. And I started using this BRRRR strategy and renovating properties in Hamilton. I did some duplex conversions, 4-plex properties, all different kind of stuff. And now I've kind of bought outside of Hamilton too. This top right-hand corner here, that's one I bought at the beginning of COVID, 8 townhouse complex in Sarnia. So I've kind of like spread my wings a little bit over Ontario, but still consistently do most of my projects in Hamilton. That's kind of where I do most of my stuff. So 3 years later, I'm 30 years old, have 13 properties and 40 doors. The portfolio value is a bit over 7 million. I did start as a mortgage agent, then partnered with my 2 partners and opened a brokerage this past year. We got a vacation property in Florida, and then been featured on, a bunch of little podcasts and YouTube shows and things like that. And then most importantly, I no longer live in my parents' basement. So that's probably my biggest psychological win there. So let's get to the prop. Now that you know a bit about me, I have a little bit of authority to speak from, here's the main question we're all here. How can anybody buy multiple rental properties, even in downtown Toronto, where, it's more difficult than, some other markets? At least people feel that way, right? So the first thing you have to do is what I call a portfolio analysis. And we do this with all our clients. And it's essentially just a review of all the properties you own, all the debts you have. And is there any kind of way where we can either restructure the debt, restructure the mortgage terms, even things like, student loans, things like that. We look at every single debt item that you have and we go, okay, what can we do with all this to optimize your borrowing power? The second thing is, you have to focus on these buy, renovate, rent, refinance transactions. This is if you want to buy multiple properties, right? If you want to buy, one of those laneway suite projects, something like that, that might be enough for you, right? But if your goal is to buy multiple properties, the BRRRR strategy is definitely what's going to get you there. We'll talk a little bit about what that is. And the third thing that I always teach kind of my clients about is you want to aim for what's called zero impact properties. And I'll explain to you what that is in the presentation as well. So step one, really important, it's this portfolio analysis. So first step is really we get you approved for mortgage, and we say, what your borrowing power is. Someone like you qualify to buy up to $1.2, $1.3 million, something like that. But what our team's gonna do next is we go, okay, can we extend any of the amortizations to 30 years on these mortgages in order to lower your payment so you qualify for a higher mortgage? Now, you could have a mortgage of $1 million, or you could have a mortgage of $600,000, and they may impact you the same depending on how the payment structure is set up. So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to drag my amortization on my primary residence out to 30 years because my goal is to pay this thing down, as soon as possible. So we have mitigation strategies for that. You can always extend your mortgage out 30 years, but then take advantage of prepayments offered in your mortgage to still pay it down on an amortization that fits your lifestyle, fits your goals. So we kind of have a mitigation strategy for everything, but here the real goal is just allowing you to borrow as much as possible. If you want to be a real estate investor, that's like a huge thing to focus on. The next thing is like, how can we strategize your debt? You know, maybe it's rolling some unsecured debt into a line of credit. Maybe it's renegotiating your student debt to actually minimize your minimum payment. There's a few things that you can do that can have a big jump. You know, if you're able to reduce a monthly bill by $500 a month, that could easily be a little over $100,000 in mortgage qualification. So these little tweaks here and there can definitely be the difference of what gets you in your property. And then finally, you know, based on your borrowing power, you have a few options. One is, you know, proceed and start going to look for a property, or we can make adjustments to your debt. We can bring in co-signers, or we can adjust what kind of asset you're looking to buy. So maybe, you know, you're looking to buy something like a fourplex, and maybe like a triplex property is more in your budget, right? So that's the kind of stuff that, you know, we assess. So after the portfolio analysis, the next step is this BRRRR strategy. Like the guys mentioned, hugely popular. Everybody's talking about the BRRRR strategy and why not? What an amazing investment strategy. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it. So it stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance. So the idea with the BRRRR strategy is that all the capital you're investing in your project, you get all of that capital back in a very short timeline. So what that does is that allows you to reinvest over and over and over again. Now, with some projects, you know, you might not get 100% of your investment back. You might get 50% of it, 60, 70, 80, but you're always just kind of striving to retrieve as much capital as possible. That's going to allow you to kind of recycle your money and buy as much property. Now, key formula to think about if you're looking to implement the BRRRR strategy is this. So whatever project you're taking on, you just want to look at, you know, what is the value of this going to be after the renovation? So what are comparable sales looking like? Once we renovate this, what's going to be the after repair value? And then based on that, you can take 80% of that after repair value. And that would be kind of like your total mortgage on the property. And then if that amount is equal to or greater than the price you bought the property for, plus your rental costs, then you have a perfect BRRRR project. If it's a little bit less, that's okay. But it's one quick way to see if your property is going to allow you to retrieve, you know, X amount of capital or not, kind of thing. So gonna have some examples of this. So how do you actually apply the BRRRR strategy? So let's just say, for example, my market based on comparable sales. And, you know, I made this presentation a few months ago. This is already outdated because these numbers are actually even bigger now. So based on comparable sales, a renovated legal duplex in Hamilton might sell for $675,000. So an investor, like one of you, finds a distressed single family bungalow and buys it for $450,000. So the investor implies 20% down, which would be $90,000 towards their down payment, and they get a mortgage of the remainder, which is $350,000. So the investor then hires a contractor to convert the property to a legal duplex with modern finishes, because we know if we do that, it's going to be worth this after repair value of $675,000, and that renovation cost, let's say $90,000. So the investor has now invested his $90,000 down payment plus the $90,000 renovation cost, so a total of $180,000. And then the investor goes to the bank and says, hey, property's worth a lot more now. The bank appraises it for the new value of $675,000 and lends you 80% of that, which is $540,000. So this $540,000 will pay out the original mortgage of $360,000. That will leave you with $180,000 left over. And then it will also pay you, the $180,000 left over will be there to pay you for your renovation cost of $90,000, as well as your entire original down payment of $90,000. That would be an example of like a perfect BRRRR project. So the result of this is you get a rental property with $0 invested. Now, it might not be $0 invested for you, right? It could be 10% invested or 15% invested. But if you're doing these BRRRR projects, typically you have a perfect turnkey product that rents for top market value. So if you end up having 10% down on a fourplex in Toronto, that's pretty good, right? Because you're buying something without issues, perfectly renovated at a high cash flow. So how to apply it, right? Like what to look for if you want to apply this strategy. So first is like, you have to be really clear with after repair value. And that's going to obviously help depending on who you're working with. So you always want to work with obviously a real estate team that has experience doing this themselves. and not, the person who says they know it, but they don't actually do it themselves. That's usually kind of a risky person. I probably wouldn't trust them. The second thing is like learn the costs for the different types of renovation. That's always going to be important. If you can acquire things off market, if you get exclusives or things like that, sometimes you're able to get them at a better market value. You can save on renovations through sweat equity. Depending on the projects you're doing, that might not be like a possibility. And then I would say Volition talked a little bit about this earlier, and it's like you want to take on more challenging projects. So like a conversion is going to raise the value of a property a lot more than a cosmetic renovation. So Edward was talking a little bit earlier about that, triplex with laneway suite. Well, that's not a cosmetic renovation. That's a large scale conversion, right? But with that project, there was a significant value increase on the property. So again, those kind of stuff are going to come with conversions or more difficult types of projects. And sometimes, it could be that like the project is actually not that big, but there could be something challenging about it that makes the value decrease. So you could have a situation where there's just nightmare tenants, like absolute disaster nightmare tenants. Well, that might be a challenge, which ends up putting you in a position to get the property at a good value, but it might not be that expensive. Right? It could be certainly maybe the thing where it's just like a waiting game to get them out. It's maybe a cash or keys situation, it's a legal eviction, what have you, right? But sometimes like these big value boosting activities, they don't always have to be expensive, but usually the conversions are kind of your best way to go. Any questions so far before we jump into these zero impact properties? Nothing. I'm just trying to see if I can pull up the comments. Okay, we got the chat here.
There's a whole bunch of stuff in the chat. I haven't even been able to follow it.
Okay, a lot going on here, but other examples of what you mean by distressed. Yeah, so distress can be many things. Distress could be like the condition of the property. Distress could be the condition of the tenants in the property. Distress could be the condition of the sellers. Right? The seller can be in a situation where, they're getting out of Canada or they're moving to Halifax and they got to sell the house in 2 weeks. So then maybe you have to look at something like a private loan that's high in fees in order to close in the time that the seller wants it, right? So distress can mean many things. There's a lot of different things that could equate to value in a property, right? So yeah, have a look and things like that, and you'll see kind of what might come up. So let's talk about these zero impact properties. So what is a zero impact property? This is a property that does not negatively impact your borrowing power. So meaning when you buy the property, let's say your maximum approval is $2 million. When you buy this property, you can then go buy another property at $2 million because the property does not negatively impact your borrowing power. Okay. So the idea of these is that you're able to buy over and over at your maximum purchase price because the property cash flows so strongly. So key formula for property to be zero impact is the monthly rental income must be double what the monthly mortgage payment is. Okay, so not factoring property taxes, management expenses, heat, utilities, anything like that. Just simply, if the monthly rental income is double the mortgage payment, then that property theoretically will not impact your borrowing power on your next purchase. So some examples of this, you completed a renovation on a triplex and your new mortgage payment after refinance of $1 million is $37.16 a month. So in the monthly rent required in order for this triplex to be a zero impact property would be $74.32. So if you have a triplex with a mortgage of $1 million against it, and your mortgage payment per month would be around $37.16, as long as you're getting at least $74.32 a month, that property will not impact your borrowing power. Now, the goal here really is to get as close to this as possible. The closer you are to this $74.32, the less of an impact the property will have on you. So the good thing with this is like we can actually just predict this in advance. So if you're looking at buying a property, we think the after repair value is going to be so-and-so, so the mortgage is going to be so-and-so. What will I qualify for in my purchase afterwards? It's very easy for our team to whip up those calculations. So if you are the kind of person who's looking to buy multiple properties, we can tell you as soon as you finish this project, here's what your qualification looks like right after, kind of thing. So how to apply zero impact strategy? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You want to learn the rent projections in your market. You want to factor those projections against the new refinanced amount, not the original purchase price and the original mortgage. And, multi-units will make this a lot easier than single family properties. So you're probably not going to hit zero impact on a condo in downtown Toronto, but you might hit it, like, for example, that triplex with laneway suite example that, Ed gave earlier. Even at that new mortgage of, I think it was $2.4 million, it was still a zero impact property. So that one was like an awesome example of this. Okay. So just some formula or just some considerations with this zero impact strategy is it doesn't work at every single bank. Okay. So just chat with my team. We'll tell you how to strategize it. The good thing is it works at the more favorable banks for investors. But yeah, there's definitely some banks where you won't qualify because the way they do underwriting creates like huge discrepancies in what you qualify for versus other banks. So this doesn't work everywhere, but it does work at most of the banks you want to work with. So next thing here is like choosing your market and choosing your asset class, right? So how do you decide where you're going to invest or what type of property you're going to invest in specifically? So you start with the after repair value, then you factor what the mortgage payment will be at that after repair value. Then you determine what rent you need to hit zero impact. And then you determine, okay, does the market rents match the zero impact rents required? Now, if you're the kind of person where like, you're just going to buy one property, well, zero impact doesn't really mean that much to you. It doesn't actually matter that much. Or if you're the kind of person where you have tons of income and tons of net worth, that qualification is very easy for you, zero impact might not be that critical for you. But if you're the kind of person where like what you qualify for is just on the borderline of an acceptable investment in Toronto, zero impact will actually make a bigger difference. Okay. So let's walk through some examples of doing this. So let's say, Toronto condo, let's pick on the condo market a little bit right now. So let's say the after repair value of, a specific type of condo is 650,000. So we know at 80% of that value, your mortgage will be 520,000. Your payment will be around 1932 a month. So the rent required for zero impact is 3864 a month. So I don't know what the rents go for in Toronto. I'm just throwing random numbers out. So please don't take this as market analysis. But if the actual rent for this asset is $2,500, well, then things won't be looking so great in terms of how easy it is to qualify on your next purchase. Okay. Another example is a Toronto fourplex. Again, I'm just throwing random values out here, so don't take any things as accurate. But let's say the valuation is 1.6 and your new mortgage is around 1.3 with a payment of 4906. The rent required for this to be zero impact would be about 9812 a month. So let's say you're getting around 7,200 a month. That wouldn't be great, but if you're getting closer to that $10,000 mark, then you would be in really good shape on this. Now, again, the main things to think about is zero impact just means the property does not impact you at all. Small debt associated with the property, like that's okay. So again, if you're a high income earner or you have very high net worth, we have some amazing net worth programs for people who have a lot of liquid net worth. This kind of stuff won't really impact you that much. It's more for the people who are on the borderline of just qualifying where they need to be, kind of thing. So zero impact, it'll be hard to hit in Toronto, but I mean, I just gave the example of one that destroyed the zero impact. I think the rents were around 12,000 and the mortgage payment was under 5. So that one had a lot of room. Even with significantly reduced rents on that project, they would still be at zero impact. So there are projects that exist, and I think you probably just need to be working with the right team who's finding those opportunities. So I think you're definitely in good hands with all these guys. And then, knowing projected rents in advance will allow our team to tell you what you'll qualify for. So like I said, you don't need to be zero impact. Let's say you're going to, have a $800 deficit on the property. We can still tell you, okay, with that $800 deficit, here's how high you qualify on the second purchase or the third or the fourth and what have you. So appraisals. So this is a really key factor in the BRRRR process, is getting the highest appraisal value possible. So when it comes to getting an appraisal, like you really want to actually take it one step further back, and you want to focus on who you choose as a lender, because that matters more for the appraisal process, I would say, to a degree, than what you do for the property, is which lender you work with. Because there's a couple things that come with the lender that you're working with. One is, do you select the appraiser? Meaning, does the mortgage person select the appraiser, or does the bank select the appraiser? Because when the bank selects the appraiser, the the appraiser doesn't really care if the mortgage broker selects the appraiser. They might be getting a call from the mortgage broker if the valuation comes in way low. I've had deals in Toronto where somebody bought at 1.72, the appraisal came in at 1.63. I called the appraiser, one conversation, a couple different comps later, the appraisal went back to 1.72. Okay, so having the opportunity to have a direct line to the appraiser involved in the transaction, to hand deliver them comparable sales, things like that, that makes a huge difference. And when the bank doesn't give you that opportunity, that is worth, like, that opportunity to work with an appraiser you choose is worth a lot more than 0.05 decrease in the interest rate. Okay, because it's going to impact how many dollars you get back. Second is, like, what is this bank's policy on self-contained units versus legal suites? Okay, this is a really important thing because some banks will use rental income from self-contained suites, some will not. Some will only use rental income from legal suites. So if your property is a legal duplex but operating as a self-contained 4-unit property, well then in that case, your qualification might vary significantly bank to bank just based on how much rental income they're willing to use. Okay, so this is a key piece. Also, this definitely matters in the appraisal too, right? So if you have legal suites, that's better than having self-contained suites. Then say is that you can only compare this property to legal fourplexes or legal triplexes. You can't compare it to, illegal properties that have self-contained suites, and that usually will help your appraisal value, right? Or, on the flip side, sometimes you can have self-contained units and the appraiser may just happen to compare them to legal suites and not even make an adjustment with it. So it's a bit of the roll of the dice, but I would say the bank's policy on self-contained versus legal, that's going to be really important. That's going to play a critical factor in the rental income calculation. And then the next thing is, how does the bank actually accept the figure for rental income? Because some banks will say, okay, we want to see leases plus corresponding bank statements, right? So in that situation, you would actually have to have the property leased out. Whereas other banks might say, okay, we know you just finished your project, so we'll actually just have an appraiser assess what it would rent for, right? And usually that's more favorable because in those situations, you'll usually get a higher end rent. And then the final one is some banks want to see your T1 reporting. So a lot of investors, they net down their real estate rentals income on their T1s pretty low. So when that happens, you might not get the opportunity to use your actual rental income that you actually get on the property because the bank's looking at what you claim net on your T1s versus what it says on the lease. So all this stuff plays a huge factor. So that's why it's really important to know which bank you're working with, to work with somebody who's just expediting the process so you're not getting screwed, because you can be working with a bank and they have the lowest interest rate and you think you just won the process, and then you do the appraisal and then you do this and all this kind of stuff and you realize, oh man, I'm getting screwed in every direction because they'll only use this amount of rental income. They're not going to compare this 4-unit against other 4 units because only 2 of the units are legal. Like, you know what I mean? So all this stuff really plays a huge factor. Next is for the actual appraisal process, have your comparable sales ready. Like, know which comparable sales you want the appraiser to use. Okay, sometimes that will help them because they'll be like, okay, well, it's Toronto, there's a million properties, I can pick from any of them, but this person's already given me 3 good ones that they want me to use, and when I look them up online, know what, they're pretty reasonable, so yeah, let's just go ahead and use these comparable sales, and I won't even look at 2 or 3 other comparable sales that might not be as favorable. Okay, I would say you probably want to conduct the appraisal before the tenants move in, just because the property will be upkept, most presentable, things like that. And then finally, you want to tailor your renovation to the highest comparable sales. So, is it something where there's there's one really good comparable sale and that comparable sale just happened to have an additional half bath in 2 of the 4 units? Well, if that's the case, maybe that's a renovation that you didn't otherwise consider, right? You might say, okay, well, half bath might increase the rental income, $150 per unit or $200 per unit, but it increases the appraisal value by, $25,000. Right. So I would just have a peek at what kind of finishes, what kind of, bedroom layout, things like that, that really nice comps have, and maybe work your renovation strategy in alignment with that. So a couple of things here. I'm going to check the chat box really here if there's any specific questions. So I want to go through this. Hang on. I'm going to read a few here. So I've never heard of a bank letting you use your own appraiser. So the bank doesn't let you use your own appraiser. What the bank does is they let you choose your appraisal company from a list of appraisal companies that they have approved in advance. So banks might allow, 10, 15, 20 different appraisal companies. And what you get to choose is a company out of those 10, 20. So for me as a mortgage broker who's literally doing refinances like all the time, I have experience with a bunch of different companies. So I could see, oh yeah, this company historically comes under value and this company historically goes at value. So I'm going to choose the company that historically goes at value. Just common sense. We see this come up in every market, like Windsor, for example, where we're doing tons of deals. We've kind of figured out which appraisal companies are more favorable, which ones are tighter on the value for whatever reason. We kind of work accordingly. Couple other questions here. Business for self, not showing high earnings, but easily qualify for high net worth. Great. So that would just be case by case basis. So we would just see, the way these net worth programs work, Adam, is that you need to have a minimum income in order to use the net worth program, but it's not the same amount of income you require to qualify on the A side. So you could be pretty good there. Daniel Martinez, good question here for zero impact. Is it straight gross rent, not considering any expenses? Yes, 100%. So it's straight gross rent. Gross rent versus mortgage payment. It's really simple to follow. I love the formula. So you can use that and apply it right away. Which banks will let you choose the appraiser? Jonathan, a ton of them. But again, there's like 100 different factors. There's where do you qualify? What kind of rents do they use? All this kind of stuff. So we have to optimize within all these different parameters, where is the best place for you to get your mortgage? So that's just part of it, but there's a lot that allow you to choose the appraisers. Is it worth it to stage the property before the appraisal? I would probably lean on the Volition team for that. I don't really know. Burr model, what's the timeline before I can refinance? Who asked that one? QG. Okay, so with the Burr model, I hear all these people talk about you need to wait 6 months before you refinance. For our team who's doing like easily over like 150, almost 200 of these just specific refinances after renovation, we're doing them immediately once the project is done. So it could be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So some banks say 6 months, but honestly, if you have a demonstrable value increase, they'll do it right away. Sometimes what banks do is they'll say, give me the appraisal upfront, prove to me that the value has gone up, and then I'll underwrite your file. So that's usually a fair compromise a lot of the banks make. So yeah, you don't need to wait 6 months. You usually can do it as soon as the project is done. What's your total debt exposure? Can you really do this no impact strategy indefinitely? Good question, Chris Law. So can you do this zero impact strategy indefinitely, or is there amount of debt that is just essentially too much for the banks? So good question. A lot of the banks have these parameters where only a certain percentage of your income in the application can be coming from rental income. So that's usually the parameter that stops people. Now, we've never had a client who just got straight up stopped by the bank who qualified. That's yet to happen. So usually people don't qualify because they no longer meet the ratios because they're not hitting zero impact every single time, or they bought a new car, or they bought a new primary residence. So, theoretically, can the bank cut you off? Yes, they always can come up with some reason to, but we've never had somebody who fit all the criteria who's ever been cut for some kind of strange reason before. So we've had people who make less than $80,000 go to 7-8 properties before. So, okay, so let's see here. If you're borrowing to invest in real estate, can you get a tax write-off? Well, these mortgages are tax deductible on the rental property. So if you're borrowing from a rental property, yes. 5 mortgages max on some banks by Morella Stan. So yeah, some of the banks say it's 5 mortgages max, but typically if you go inside the branch, like that rule doesn't exist. So I would say just that's case by case basis, but we can touch base on that. Ron Visser, Jacob, do you help investors with short-term rentals or vacation properties? Yes, absolutely. It's a tricky space. Lenders are just getting to the point where they're starting to understand short-term rental, right? So, they're kind of looking at them as self-employed people, right? They want to see a 2-year history due to the variable nature of the income. But what you can always do is you can get a market rent assessment of what it would rent for as a long-term unit. And in that case, if that's enough rental income for you to qualify, that could be the trick there, where you can continue to finance these short-term rentals or vacation properties. Okay, a lot of questions, went through a ton. I'm going to jump back in the presentation. Thank you everybody for being so active with the questions. That was awesome. So I want to show you guys Sean, one of my favorite clients, who really took this BRRRR strategy, zero impact strategy, all to heart. And I'll tell you a little bit about his story. So when I met Sean, he owned a triplex, and he lived in one of the 3 units with his wife and his 2 daughters. So he was really kind of going the frugal route and trying to live kind of like financially independent and things like that. So what we did was we refinanced his primary residence. We pulled out $70,000 so he could buy a rental. So some of his challenges was, you know, his salary was under $70,000. So his borrowing power was very limited. He had a family with 2 young children. So time wasn't always on his side. He had a full-time job and no renovation experience. And yeah, so with all these factors, it's like, these are a lot of reasons to make excuses, right? You know, borrowing power is not crazy, has a family and kids to take care of, works a full-time job, and, you know, he's never really done real estate investing. So his strategy was he was going to focus on acquiring deals and hit within his budget in Fort Erie, and his budget wasn't very high. So Fort Erie is a small town south of St. Catharines, Niagara region. So what he did was he put in sweat equity to complete the renovations as cheap as possible on every project. He BRRR'd every single deal he did, and every single deal he did was also zero impact property. He literally took what I said so literally and then just did the process over and over. So in 2 years, he got his first duplex. The rent was $3,150. The payment was $1,371. So he's zero impact that. His next duplex, a lot cheaper, similar ratios. Then he bought a 4-plex. Then he did another duplex. Then he did a 4th duplex. This all happened within 2 years. And he lived in a triplex while doing all this. So what else kind of changed in his life? So he started using the strategy. Then all of a sudden, like, everybody around him started reaching out to actually like invest with him and be a money partner with him. Like, even his realtor, who is supposed to be the expert, actually now gives him money to go invest in property because of how much influence and how much success he's had in real estate. He actually was able to retire his wife from the cash flow of the property. So he makes so much cash flow that she was actually just able to walk away from her job and focus on taking care of the kids. He launched a coaching course. He's in the process of becoming a real estate agent, and he continues to invest in has 15 properties, including he bought some vacation land in Belize this year. This is his new like fun project. So, you know, it doesn't really matter where you start. You know, this is like a completely different market, but also like a lot lower income than most people, right? And he had a lot of excuses, a lot of time constraints, a lot of different, you know, experience constraints, but he was able to, you know, build a really good situation for himself. And, you know, again, like, you look at the valuation of these properties, 5 properties for him might be 1 4-plex in Toronto in terms of valuation. So you don't necessarily need to go do 5 projects. You can maybe do 1 project, and maybe you never need property management because you can manage 1 project on your own in addition to your full-time job and things like that, right? So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities out there if you're just willing to take the action, surround yourself with the right people and all that. And yeah, I just want to feature that case study. So key takeaways here, it's really, you know, these BRRRR transactions are what's going to allow you to buy property for free and continue to buy property over and over. The zero impact strategy, zero impact properties, they're going to allow you to buy at your maximum purchase power over and over. And, you know, if you combine these 2 strategies, anyone can really buy millions in real estate. So if you want to connect with me, I'd love to connect. There's tons of people on this webinar. I cannot believe how many people are signed up. I didn't realize they're so busy. But, you know, please add me on Instagram at Jacob Perez 10. My email is there as well, Jacob at JP Mortgage. And if you go on my Instagram, you'll see there's a booking button. So you can literally just book a call directly in my calendar from there. If you don't find any call slots that work, send me an email and I'll see if I can work a few things around to squeeze you in. But yeah, let's go through maybe if there's any questions again here. I'll pull them up. So 1 second here.
Oh, dude, that is awesome. Thanks so much. That's a really interesting way to look at it. Yeah, I mean, our clients use Jacob. So the fact that Jacob is in Hamilton doesn't mean anything. He has access to all the same lenders, and his knowledge and his experience, even in a short time, is quite astounding. He's been able to get stuff done for our clients when no one else could. Literally, we've worked on a bunch of he's worked on a bunch of our client files where they were stuck, and he got them out of binds. He got them, better, higher LTVs and all that great stuff. So yeah, he really knows what he's talking about. So no, thanks, Jacob. That was an awesome presentation. I don't know are there questions out there?
Seen a few here. What are the figures for lenders to consider property as zero impact? So yeah, like I said earlier, it's really, if your monthly rental income is double your monthly mortgage payment, that's a zero impact for some lenders, not all lenders, but the kind of lenders you're going to want to work with. I want to see one. As you scale to many doors, is it better to hold under personal name or corporation? What's the best strategy or best legal structure? That's going to be kind of personal to the people that you work with, right? So if your goal is to, stay 4 units or less and take advantage of the best borrowing options, it is easier when you're borrowing under a personal name. Now, if you're a self-employed person and you have $500,000 sitting in your operating company and you want to deploy that towards real estate, well, there's a pretty serious tax exposure if you take that out personally. So maybe for somebody like that, a holdco structure might be worth it, but then they just might find some limitations on the buying side. Now, there's some ways to structure the holdco where you get best of both worlds. You get best in terms of borrowing options and best in terms of tax efficiency on the back end. And, we can chat about that kind of stuff offline for sure. And then it depends on the asset type, right? So if you're doing a commercial asset like 6 units or more, or 8 units, 10 units, well, then you're probably gonna do those in a corporation because there's no financing difference. But great question. It's gonna be pretty case by case. I would say I have some properties in holding company, I have some properties in personal name. It just kind of depends on the strategy, the people involved in the deal, things like that. Are there any lender suggestions, strategies that can help borrowers mitigate risk? Finding lenders with policies on loan forgiveness. I would say, the main thing, like laying on that question, is just work with people who can do all that grunt work for you. You don't need to go talk to 40 different banks. You talk to one person at the bank. You don't even know if you spoke to the right person at the bank, because sometimes you talk to one person at RBC, you get a different answer from a different guy at RBC, right? So I would say, come to me directly, and then there might be a product that's perfect for you. Even if it's not through us, we'll connect you to the correct people at the banks we don't work with as well, because honestly, it's just going to save everybody time in the long run. So we do that too. Happy to refer it out if there's better options out there. I'm trying to go through these. Hang on. Can someone form a holdco to buy their first rental property without their primary residence involved? Don't really fully understand that question, so I'll pass on that one. If you refinance, can you roll some of the funds onto a HELOC to keep the mortgage amount low so that rent can be 2x the mortgage payment so that it is a no impact property? Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, that's one version. You could take it out as a home equity line or something like that, right? But then if you are using that as your source of down payment, then the equation. So it really just kind of depends on where the down payment is coming from at that point. Okay, pandemic induced drop in rents. Can this hurt your financing options? What the rents are impact your financing options. So if your rents then yes. If your rents are not, then no. And then in terms of market rent assessment, I think there's probably a lot of appraisers who are still probably putting a market assessment at what the rents were prior to maybe than what they are now. It's hard to say. We haven't had too many issues with anything like that at all this year. Jacob, is there a minimum amount of units that you need to qualify for commercial lending? Can a fourplex or triplex? Good question, actually. So basically, any property theoretically could go under commercial financing. You're going to get different answers depending on who you talk to. You can definitely buy a fourplex under commercial and under residential. What you might find is that the loan to values are better on the residential side when it's based off your personal borrowing power versus the income of the property. So I think the whole thing with commercial is it's a lot different when you're refinancing versus when you're purchasing, because when you're refinancing, your rents are higher and your options are going to be better. But on the way in, it can be more challenging. You might need to go with a private loan first and then get to commercial financing on the refinance. There's a few things there. What should come first, refinance or looking to multiple unit property? I don't understand the question, Cal, so maybe if you want to rewrite it, I'll let you know. Elaine, I've heard of another version of the net zero impact calculation where you deduct property tax and utilities as part of the calculation. Is this too conservative or market dependent? So here's the thing. There's a million different rental income calculations from all the different banks, okay? And some of them will sound more favorable on paper. So this bank will say, oh, well, we use 100% of the rental income and we use, 80% of the rental income. But all these different things play a factor. Like, do they use the actual lease or do they use the T1 generals? Do they use a market rent assessment? Okay, maybe they're favored this way, but then if you have a big HELOC, they underwrite it as if it's fully utilized, whereas one bank will only underwrite it based on the balance. So really, when I say that zero impact formula, it's like where we found people qualify the highest of all the banks, kind of thing. But yeah, there's different ones that exist out there, but they're not nearly as straightforward to calculate. Okay, so I think that might be, I think that might be everything question wise.
Hey, Jacob, I was just going to ask you this instead of typing it out. So it's to build on the commercial financing. So if, say, we revisit the triplex we talked about earlier, with the laneway, say after the refinance, the mortgage payment, let's just say it's on like $2.4 million. Let's say it's $9,500 a month. Let's say the pandemic, things stay shitty. The total rent is about $15,000. So it's not a zero impact, right? Because we're about 3,000 short. In that case, would it be better to try for commercial financing? Because, say you want to do a couple of these, even if you're earning $500,000 a year, getting multiple $2.5 million mortgages, you're going to hit that wall, right?
Yeah.
And most banks look at that as, wow, you have like 10 million in debt, right? Whereas commercial is more so off the cash flow. So even if you're only getting 70% loan to value instead of the 80, I mean, with some of these, you can pretty much pull out almost all your money, even at 70% loan to value. So have you ever seen it actually work getting commercial financing based off the cash flow for something under 5 units, or is 5 units generally
totally. Yeah, totally. We've done it a lot of times. I just had a client where he just straight up income wise does not come near qualification. He bought a fourplex in Sudbury and we put it through the commercial channel because the fourplex's rents were really good. So he couldn't even qualify on the res side. So we had to do it through the commercial channel. So I think in this specific situation with the laneway is you would just look at both options. What loan to value are you guys willing to give me on the commercial side based on the financials, right? And contrast that to what they're willing to give you on the residential. And let's say the residential for some reason is way better, right? Then you could determine, okay, does taking this better option, is it worth it with how this is going to impact me on other things I want to do in the future? Right. So it's just going to be an opportunity cost question for you. And I just say explore both options and then go from there based on the data.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, it's funny you asked that, Vinay, because Jacob and I have literally had a conversation about this, about this business model actually, because as we were talking about Volition Ventures and kind of launching an LP and being able to do this over and over again. Commercial was really the only answer because you can't keep on doing this on the residential side. So yeah, it's funny enough, we actually had this conversation probably 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like, it's hard, right? Because you started investing using this burst strategy and this 80% loan to value and appraisals costing $400 or $500. And then, just to wrap your head around jumping to this commercial side where things are much different. But, once you embrace that, you'll see like the commercial side is like really good. I did a few commercial deals this year, like personally, and I'm like, man, I like this better because I don't feel like I'm personally being judged during the approval process. So I think the property's being judged and not me. So like, I actually prefer this. So, it's there's pros and cons, and glad we have both channels to explore whatever makes sense for everybody.
What's the highest loan to value you've kind of seen for commercial? Is it generally like 70 kind of where it caps out, or is there acceptance for 75 or anything like that? Like, I doubt they'd be doing 90 or like 85 or anything above what residential would do, but
yeah. So there's different versions. Okay. So, obviously the financials are what stirs everything, right? So you definitely can get 80% loan to value if it's straight res. So all residential units, no like commercial component. On that 8 townhouse complex I bought, we got 80% loan to value, 30-year amortization on the purchase, not even the refinance. But again, it's like only one bank offered that. We talked to like 15 banks. Every other bank sucked compared to this one, right? So that's one thing. And then if you get a CMHC insured loan, okay, so if you're going to do a CMHC insured loan, you want to do it on the refinance because it's such a process to do it on the buy. But on that laneway you guys are talking about, because it's going to be perfectly renoed and things like that, it might actually be a fit for it. CMHC will go as high as 85% loan to value. And we got that offer on the eight townhouse complex. They approved us for it, but we decided to go in with a conventional because we're going to refinance on CMHC on the way out.
When you do CMHC insured, how do you find their ARVs, not ARVs, their appraisal values though?
Well, I mean, the appraisal value is going to be based on like you're going to have the same appraiser do it on the conventional banking side as you will on the CMHC side. So that really shouldn't impact things too much, but you can get it underwritten in advance, right? Like you would essentially just put the application through both channels and see what both offer and then go from there, right? So it's not that crazy. And you know, the good thing with CMHC too, it's like it's a long process. So that's why it's like you could really only do it on the refinance side, because on the purchase you won't close on time, right? So if you try it on the refinance side, it's possible you can go as high as 35-year amortization as well. They do 40-year am, but only on like new construction buildings. 35-year amortization might be an option depending on how good of condition that property is you guys are doing.
Good stuff.
Tina asked a question here. Can a triplex with a laneway house still get a commercial mortgage? I would assume so. Yes, I haven't done one, but I could not see why not. As long as everything's legal, because on the commercial side, the legality matters a lot. Whereas on the res side, they accept like self-contained suites. So everything's legal, zone, all that should be no issue. Jacob, can you comment on rates for commercial versus residential, building on Tina's question? Yeah, flow. So commercial rates typically like percent higher, I would say, at least than res rates. But again, like, you know, you'll see like right now with commercial, what's happening is the fixed rates on the commercial side are actually pretty good, but the variables are very high. So, you know, the fixed rates might be in the high 2s, the variables might be in the high 3s. That's what I've been seeing on the res, like straight res commercial deals I've been looking at. CMHC, if you get a CMHC loan, it's like laughable how low the interest is, like lower than what you'll get on the residential side.
Cool.
Yeah.
If there's a ton of chatter on and questions throughout the entire presentation, if we haven't answered it, you can repost it, because it's actually really hard to go back and figure out which questions haven't been answered. I've been trying to do that, and it's been really tough. So repost your question or unmute yourself and you can ask it directly.
Yeah, actually, I had a question for you, Jacob. This is Will. I was just wondering what kind of financing options are available for renovation? Does it typically have to be self-finance, or are there opportunities to finance it, you know, third party?
Yep. So a few options, right? I mean, there's mortgage types on the residential side that are like purchase plus improvements, but they typically cap out at $40,000. So, you know, if you're doing any kind of serious project, that's probably not going to be an option for you. In terms of financing renovations, we look at a few things, right? Can we set you up with lines of credit in advance against some of your other properties so that you have the capital yourself, right? If the answer is no, then we can look to another party, which would be like private loans, right? So you can get a private loan in second position on one of your properties or something like that at some slightly higher interest. And that might be an option for you, right? You can borrow the funds privately from somebody in your network. You know, you might have a family or friend who says, hey, you know, do you want to make 6 or 7% on your money in the next 6 months? You know, some people literally lend their money out for that, right? So you can maybe get something like that. So I would say we can explore you a few options. If you're ever in that predicament, we can definitely help you out with funds. But in terms of mortgage products, the built-in reno funds, typically about 40 grand max. The construction financing products can be a bit of a nightmare in kind of everyone's experience, like to work with, in terms of the things they put you through to get your first draw and all this stuff, and getting another draw and charging you a legal fee every single time you get a draw. A lot of people just go with private funds when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I would say case by case, but yeah, definitely hit me up and we could chat further on it.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jacob.
Were there any other questions? Another one just popped up.
Okay, commercial mortgages follow the same 5-year terms of renewals as residential. Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, you can choose your terms just like on residential side. So yeah, nothing too crazy, not too much of a difference there. Anything else? Okay. Is it possible to become a private lender through your company? Yeah, definitely. So, we have a lot of clients who, they've built up a bit of wealth. They want to just lend out some money privately. So best thing to do is we can have a phone call. We can go over kind of what your risk profile is, what kind of deals you're willing to lend on. And then if there's a match, then we'll reach out to you and offer you an opportunity. And then the main thing with private lending is like, taking the opportunity quick, because if we'll offer it to like 4 or 5 people, whoever is like most serious and wants the private lend opportunity, we go from there. But the good thing about working with like a mortgage broker directly, like we can directly tell you how they're going to pay you back. We see their credit, we see their income, we see the project. Like it's very easy, so it'll be pretty safe for sure. Okay. Cool. So yeah, so if that's it, guys, really appreciate all the questions, like everybody staying engaged, everybody like being on the call. It's been awesome, like talking to everybody. So please, guys, reach out to me. Let's stay in each other's network. I love just seeing all the different projects people are taking on. I think it's awesome. Oh, one more. Oh no, this one came to me privately. I'll do it for the group. So what are your thoughts on fixed versus variable mortgage? Honestly, like I put all my mortgages on variable. All 13 are on variable. If you're a real estate investor, you probably want the flexibility. I'm moving my mortgages. I'm putting HELOCs on. I'm selling this place or what have you. The big benefit of the variable is that the penalty to break it is so small. Now, one thing too, if you just want like a little prediction outlook on rates, Bank of Canada's kind of said that they're not moving their variable up for the next like 3 years or so. And the way kind of the variable rates work is they're typically tied to the economy. So the economy is doing really strong. They'll increase the Bank of Canada prime to stimulate people paying back their debt because they theoretically have the money if the economy is strong. The economy is doing weaker, they'll decrease the rates so people borrow more, invest in the economy. So, even before COVID, we've had technology replacing jobs. We've had labor, skilled labor even being outsourced to other countries. We have, a liberal government, which is good for some things, not pro-business whatsoever. So there's been a lot of factors in Canada that haven't been wouldn't make me too fearful of rate hikes on the variable. So now with COVID thrown into mix as well, like I think it's a really safe time to be in a variable. And, with those penalties to break, you're pretty much always safe because you can even always switch it to a fixed at no cost. So for me, hardcore on the variable. The fixed product penalties are pretty outrageous sometimes, so I would recommend avoiding those. How many years prior in taxes does a bank want when refinancing a property? It depends. So if you're self-employed, they'll usually want to see 2 years, depending on the type of financing you're getting. If you're not self-employed, they won't really look at your tax returns.
Hey, Jacob, are there any common mistakes you see people make when going through the refinance process? They before closing, they lease a car or they max out their credit cards buying Christmas presents, or they, decide that they want a boat or something like that. Like what are kind of, I guess, just some of the stuff for people, like what are some things when trying to refinance or even just get a loan, you should avoid completely until the loan's finalized and in your pocket?
Yeah, so outside of the obvious stuff, like don't take on another loan while you're trying to get, a so-and-so loan, right? One that happens to a lot of people on these BRRRR projects that, try to make it a habit of warning all my clients is a lot of times when people are doing renovations, they're financing them on lines of credit, then maybe they max out their line of credit, they get to unsecured lines of credit, credit cards, all the different products to kind of fund their renovation. So one thing is like, a lot of people know that you need to have established credit to have a good credit score. A lot of people know that you have to make your payments on time, your minimum payments on time. But what a lot of people don't know is that banks look at how much you're leveraging of your credit. So if you're using more than 50% of the limit on your credit cards and unsecured lines of credit, that will put your credit score in a temporarily negative position. So if you have a line of credit and the limit $1,000 and you have an $8,000 balance against it and you're just making the minimum payments every single month, your credit score is going to start to drop. So what happens to a lot of people who are doing these renovations is they max out every single card doing the renovation, And then when they come to do the refinance, their credit score has dropped so much that they no longer qualify at a major bank in order to do the refinance. So this happens a lot. So what we kind of tell people is like, try to keep the balances of all your cards under 50%. And if you can't do that, let us know. And maybe we can just get you a private loan in advance, because those aren't going to impact your credit in the negative way. But, you know, it's a pretty quick mitigation strategy to fix that too. You know, a private loan to pay out some unsecured debt, wait 3-4 months, and the credit typically jumps back up. But that's definitely one thing, is over leveraging your card. So if you have like a $1,000 limit credit card, just don't use it, because like literally anything you do on it is going to be almost over leveraging it, kind of thing, according to the way the banks view it.
Okay, then what about, say, secured lines? So say you have a HELOC, you pull that money for renos, or say you have it already pulled and it's invested in stocks or something like that.
Yep.
Does that impact you a lot less?
Yeah, HELOCs are fine. You could be at full capacity on the HELOC and it doesn't impact your credit score that way. Yeah. Okay, a few questions in here. Are there ever any concerns refinancing 2 properties back to back within, say, a month of each other? Absolutely not. Do it all the time, Scott, but thank you. Yeah, we do that literally all the time, like back to back refinances. Ron, does your firm organize private mortgages for investors? If so, what are the rates? We do, but like it's case by case. So I can't really give any rates. It's, you know, is it first position? Is it second position? What's the risk profile of the borrower? All that kind of stuff is going to play a factor. So I would tell you, I could give you an idea if I had the case in front of me. If you have a construction loan with scheduled finance pulls, ask the appraiser for the outline that they assess level of construction. Yes. Good point, Brennan. Thank you. What's your email address, Jacob? I'm going to type it in the chat box for everybody. So. Okay. So let's see if I missed anything. Any other questions? Anybody else jumping in here? Okay, I think we're good.
Yeah, it's looking good. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
This is yeah, this has been fantastic. Let me just grab the screen back here. Yeah, for sure. Like, we've worked with Jacob for years. He's helped a bunch of our clients. He's provided solutions when others couldn't. So it's yeah, reach out to him. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's yeah, he's a great guy. So yeah, just really quickly again, we touched on this really quickly before. Typically we have a meetup every month, but next month is not our regular meetup. It's our masterclass. This is, again, just a quick recap. This is going to be the fundamentals of real estate. You're going to learn basically what you should walk out of here with is a game plan for how you're going to invest in Toronto. You should walk out of here with the tools and the analytics. You should know what to buy, where to buy, how much it should cost generally. Yeah, so it should be a fun event. And did we share the link for this, Shelby?
Yes, we did. It's in the chat.
Okay, it's in the chat. So, and then yeah, we're gonna hold a draw. Maybe you'll win a free ticket. So, and then lastly, this is really, I think, the differentiator for Volition. So, you know, this is where I think we offer the most value. Of course, we can help you go find that property, no question. But I think what very few people do when starting out is they'll just go out and buy a property without much forethought, without much planning. And I think that approach is fraught with failure. All right. There's a lot of pitfalls, and you know, one wrong move, starting off in one wrong direction, could set you back years in terms of the time frame it would take you to reach your goals. So we offer a complimentary 1-hour advisory session where we'll help you. We'll figure out where you're at, figure out where you want to go, and help you build a customized plan to get there. This is where we're going to help you build a strategy, help you build a plan. We're going to help you define what it is that you're trying to achieve. And we're going to translate your goal, your life goals into a financial goal, and then help you build a real estate plan to get there. So here is an opportunity we could talk about. We could definitely answer all the questions you have in the session, but this will be, for example, we could be talking about what we probably won't be talking about here is any one particular property, because I think starting to talk about any one particular property or like, oh, should I buy a condo? What you'll realize in going through a session like this is that those aren't the right questions to be asking. What you really need to be understanding is, what are my goals and what strategy, what business models am I going to employ that are going to help me get there? And here you're going to really understand things like multiplier effects, how to double the size of your portfolio every 4 years, for example, things like that. And this all happens in the planning and strategy phase. So yeah, sign up for advisory. There's a link. Is there a link in the chat? Shelby, is there a link in the chat?
Yes, there is.
Okay, there's a link in the chat. So you can sign up for advisory through that link, or you can drop us a line at info@volitionprop.com and schedule a session. So anyway, hopefully we'll see you at the masterclass. And who can do it? You can do it. So we think you guys can do it, and we think that we want to help you along your journey. So thanks very much, guys. If you want to stick around and chat, I'll leave the bridge open. If you guys have any questions from anyone on the Volition team, we'll be here for another couple minutes.
Hey, Matt, it's Ling.
Hi, Ling.
Hey, just one quick question. I know that the REIT thing is put on hold because of some stuff on your end. Do you guys have a line of sight in terms of next steps, just as we're planning for the new year, moving money around and stuff? So what's going on that piece?
What's going on in that piece? So funny enough, okay, so what you saw today in the property spotlight is basically a prototype of what we would be doing for that REIT. But this is me calling it a REIT and you calling it a REIT is exactly the problem, right? So what I mean by that is that we started speaking to a securities lawyer, and the securities lawyer basically was like, oh, I was surprised at how scrutinized we were going to be by securities law. I was like, I just thought, okay, you know what? I've got a great product and a great service, and I think we can execute on it. We've done it before. We have a great track record. And yeah, I mean, just like I've done a bunch of joint ventures in the past. I thought it was going to be like a joint venture. He's like, nope. The way that you guys are kind of approaching it, like taking money from multiple sources and talking about it kind of publicly like this, you're going to be subject to securities law. I was like, whoa, okay. So that was an eye-opening experience for us when we started having that conversation with him, and that's really what threw a wrench into stuff. So funny enough, if you have 1.5 million and you're just one person, and we have a private conversation about it, that's okay. As soon as I start talking about it on this Zoom call or anything of the sort, it's now subject to securities law. So Ling, if you have 1.5 million and you want to have a chat, then I'm willing to have that chat.
In a couple of years, maybe.
In a couple of years, okay. But anyway, that's just so you know, that's what's been our roadblock. It hasn't been, well, I mean, we know the business model, we know how to execute on it. That's the actual investment part is not the problem. It is the lawyer and securities commission and being compliant with that has been the hard part. But again, if you want to have a conversation, we'll take it completely offline. If you and a couple of your friends want to having private conversations is okay. The problem is, as soon as I start talking about it publicly, then all bets are off. And then I'm going to have the SEC, or not the SEC, the OSC, OCS? Anyway, the Ontario Securities Commission knocking at our door.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry that we don't have line of sight and we don't have a specific plan like, oh, in 3 months, we're going to start raising funds. It's not quite like that right now because of these some of the complexities around securities law.
Okay. No, thanks for the update.
Matt, can I jump? What exactly are you not allowed to say?
Well, technically, so again, you've done joint ventures. I've done joint ventures. We know how to do joint ventures. Joint ventures is very much on a personal level, right? You're not going out and soliciting. So as soon as I start talking about this with 100 people on the line, I'm now quote unquote, soliciting. And when I'm soliciting, I'm now subject to securities law. So, I thought, I thought it was like the number of people you want in a deal, or, I thought, or it's nothing. It actually, where the line is drawn is how you're going about trying to raise the capital. So, I mean, we've all done smaller stuff. This is the first time we're going and raising for a, $3 million fourplex or whatever. We've all done, $800,000 joint ventures, $1.2 million joint ventures, whatever, 1.4, where, typically it's like one partner or maybe two partners or something like that. And those are kind of like more private conversations. But once you start going out and like trying to like publicly announce that you're going to do this, they start scrutinizing everything. So for example, can't say REIT, can't say private equity, can't give you projections without having had that performer run by my securities lawyer, right? Like just tons of shit like that. And they're just like, whoa, okay, we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into. We need to take this a bit slower.
Hey, Matt, I think you guys actually had a speaker. I want to say the name was Bo or something. He was originally from Alberta or Edmonton. He talked about how he's like one of the joint venture kings. He did like the funny dance.
Dave DeBow. Yeah.
Dave DeBow. Yeah, that's it. I think he mentioned how one big thing is like, if you want to work with him, you would have to basically have multiple conversations with him over the course of like 6 months to establish an ultra clear history.
Do you know why?
Because of securities law. He did say though that he's like, well, if you have over 1.2 million liquid, we can go straight to doing business, and because you're technically high net worths, and being high net worths automatically makes you an accredited investor. It's a very weird thing.
Yeah.
Right.
This is exactly it. So this, joint venture king, a guy who knows how to do joint ventures, he's talking about exactly this, because he's basically under, like, for a guy who does that much in joint ventures, him, Russell Westcott, a lot of these guys who do a lot, like 60, 100 different joint ventures, these people have extremely detailed CRMs and databases, because they log the conversation. The reason that he logs these conversations is because he has to consider you a business associate.
Or a friend.
Or a friend.
Yeah.
You just met the guy, right? Like, you're obviously not friends. And the question is, are you actually business associates? So me and the securities lawyer had this long conversation around what constitutes a business associate. So we were like, okay, what if a client of ours, an existing Volition client, as an example, someone who's transacted with us, what if they wanted to work with us? And he's like, that's not necessarily a business associate. I'm like, what the hell? Like, how much more business can you possibly do? So these are the types of conversations we've been having. And I just said, this is too much of a pain in the butt. Like, I didn't realize we were getting into this level of scrutiny. So yeah, but yeah, Russell Westcott walked us through what his system is. And this is why, he logs every conversation he ever had with you. He has a very detailed CRM that demonstrates the number of emails that you guys have exchanged, text messages, and everything. It's crazy, just to prove to the SEC, sorry, OSC or whatever, that you guys are business associates, because you're not friends. Friends are friends, right? But Russell Westcott and Dave DeBow are trying to prove that these people are business associates. So anyway, does that answer your question, Justin? You're on mute.
Yeah, it shed some light. It's some stuff I've heard previously. It's just and all that with the CRM and whatnot. It's kind of tricky.
If it's funny, if someone just comes to the table with a certain net worth, certain net worth in liquid assets actually, and then it's like net worth excluding your primary residence, and has to be liquid. And there's a bunch of the stuff that I think someone's asking.
Yeah, accredited investor.
Accredited investor.
Right.
Then we can go straight to doing the deal, right? Don't need to worry. Yeah, anyway, those are some of the challenges I've never run into before, just doing kind of, low-key joint ventures in the past. Any other questions? Oh, Mike Corner, so you need 6 months of conversations. There's no clear-cut answer. So if you speak to one person, they'll give you a different answer from another person. But generally speaking, so Dave DeBow, his comfort level, according to his risk profile and his securities lawyer, was probably like, okay, if you can log 6 months of conversations, or I can prove that you've been in my database and we've exchanged this, or we've done this type of deal before, this type of conversation, then that's good enough. So whereas maybe Russell Westcott's like, no, it's not just 6 months of conversations. We actually have to prove that you've been to my seminars, you have been we've done other stuff together. So it's not just 6 months. You've been on my mailing list, right? So
yeah, I think for Dave DeBow, you have to join like his private group as well and like be slightly active on there. Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's the other thing you have to do.
He's trying to prove.
Yeah,
he's trying to make a somewhat irrefutable case to a securities lawyer, if they came knocking, that this person was legit, right? This person crossed the threshold.
Yeah, and that's going to vary by the provincial, financial legislate.
Yeah, those guys are out west.
It's
right?
over OSC, and then there's Alberta's different, BC's different, and it's all over the place.
What's funny? So I just moved into my new house a few months ago. My neighbor is a lawyer with the OSC.
Wait, is this the one that doesn't like you, Matt?
No, that's the one that doesn't like me. This one likes me, but as long as I stay on his good side and I don't violate securities law, then
Just say, hey man, come in my garage, have a couple beers, and then just firing away with questions.
Yeah, I know. Free consultation.
Trade advice. There you go.
Yeah. Did everyone get the questions answered? I feel like. Did someone say that Matt Carr had a question? I think Ed said Matt Carr had a question. Is Matt still here?
He did have a question. I saw something pop up.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was though.
Honestly, it was really hard. I tried following the chat and I went through it and I was like, okay, I'll go and answer some questions. But then I read the question, but then the chat is this long. So I'm like, oh, did it get answered already? So I go scrolling to see whether it got answered, and then the chat's still moving, and then my the message I'm trying to read is like jumping, and I'm like, okay, I give up.
I think some people get caught up in the chat and they miss some of the information. So they're asking redundant questions. Right? But it's a lot of information if you don't know, right? It's really a lot to consume if you're relatively new.
Yeah, I mean, this takes years. You know this. I remember the very first time that I got engaged in one of these real estate whatever, like seminars. It was a rain event. It was a rain acre. And I thought I was going to go to a 2-day acre course and I was going to learn everything I need to know about investing in real estate. And then I was just going to mosey on out there and go invest, right? And I was like, oh, I had already bought my first fourplex in the annex and whatever. And I was like, hey, like I kind of know, but I'll go learn. I'll go learn, see what these guys have to say. And Rain's education really opened up my eyes. And I was like I'm a pretty tough sell. I'm a pretty skeptical person by nature. Like I'm an engineer, so I like to, I've got a very low threshold for risk, and I like to mitigate risk, and I certainly don't like wasting $3,500 on some membership. You're gonna very, very few organizations are gonna get me to spend that kind of money. But that weekend, by the end of that weekend, I was like, damn, there's a lot to know. Yeah. And I was like, I signed up for Rain that weekend. I then subsequently learned everything there was to learn from Rain, and I also realized that Rain's business model doesn't work in Toronto. That's when I kind of branched off from Rain and had to create Volition basically to have a business model that actually worked here locally. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
I know people still talk about you. I mean, I just joined Rain maybe a couple of years ago now, and there are folks that I know that talk about you.
Really?
Yeah. You're the guy that kind of understands how to make Toronto work as you put yourself.
Well, it's funny because Rain's model. Chris gave me a thumbs up. Rain's model doesn't work in Toronto. So that's the funny thing. So like Rain teaches this very generic business model that works probably in most places across Canada, but does not work here because Rain doesn't account for, well, first of all, number one, like Ontario's landlord-tenant laws, right? What that means is that, like, if you followed Rain's model, it would just be follow the cash flow, right? Follow the cash flow. It'd be investing in Windsor and Barrie and Hamilton and some of these places, right? And the problem there is that we realize that a compromised tenant profile is the biggest risk to your business. And like all of us actually had it. And that's actually part of the reason that we refocused back to Toronto, because the tenant profiles here, we discovered that the professional millennial tenant profile is willing to spend quite a bit in rent. Actually, I don't think they should spend that much in rent, but I'm not their financial manager. But basically, like it was actually the lowest risk tenant profile. These guys had very good jobs, well-paid jobs. They were educated. They took care of their place. They were a transient tenant profile. They weren't going to stay forever. It was just like but the problem is, if I followed Rain's advice to a T, they would never focus on Toronto. Toronto doesn't work for them, according to their business model, because they want X $100 of cash flow from a $180,000 townhouse in somewhere, right?
Well, your cash flow is your staying power, right?
That's just it. Like, and that's where I felt it's when I turned that corner that I got away from, because cash flow is a very easy concept to understand, right? So most people just go, okay, $500 cash flow, great. And then they think, oh, okay, if I need to replace my salary and I make $60,000 a year and that's $5,000 a month, I need 10 of these. Okay, great. I'll just go do 10 of. They don't realize, okay, well, really, you're only going to qualify for maybe your second one or your third one, or even if you continue qualifying, you're going to probably hit your door limit or number of mortgages limit or something. Like it's very difficult. And then, it's very difficult for these people to actually reach their goals. And they just go, okay, I'm just going to take what I did once and I'm going to do it 10 times. It's not that easy, right? Yeah. Like when you have multiple mortgages, you know how it is. It's crazy. It's crazy hard to get that next one, right? Every mortgage you get makes it harder to get your next one. And so what he presented tonight was kind of interesting, like the zero impact, but like, zero impact, where do you, in smaller city centers, maybe that is a possibility, but here it's, that's why we employ some of these business models to try to boost our cash flow, change of use and stuff like that.
100%. And you guys kind of proved that it is doable. The question is it attainable for most people? So, Vinay's a perfect example, right? You could see the business model works. It's just that a lot of people don't have access to that capital, right? That's the other thing, right? Like
we fully recognize not everyone can reach into their couch cushions and pull out $1.X millions of dollars capital. So we fully recognize this is not for everyone. But where we challenge people is if it is attainable for you, if you happen to have the resources, have you fully thought through buying a 30-plex in Hamilton versus maybe you're doing a 4-plex conversion, something like that here? Because, my God, like it gives me, I still have PTSD from some of the times I have to deal with tenants, man. I don't know why people want 20, 30, 40, 50 units. I honestly don't. I want 0 tenants. That's my goal, actually.
You know what's so funny, Matt? I mean people from all across the country, and I hear those stories of, this guy's got 100 doors and this person's got, 30, 40 here.
Don't want that.
You're gonna realize, what is the value of that portfolio? And you're like, well, this is like a couple properties downtown, right? And so to your point, it really, that's kind of scale. And you can look at it in 2 different ways, right? Scale is, you could say, okay, well, we can go get something out in Stratford, a 30, 40 unit building, right? For maybe, for example, just what Vinay's working on there, right? His project. I mean, those are the trade-offs. 3, 4 units versus 30 or 40, Vinay's not going to have any headaches. It's luxury. These people like nice stuff. They treat it with respect. They're not giving you stories of how, they don't have enough money for cat food or whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, like where this came from for me was my parents. Like I was born and raised in a small town. I'm not from Toronto, actually. I was born and raised in Belleville. And I remember my parents had rental properties. I remember chasing these tenants down for rent checks with my parents. Like we would go drive to their place, knock on their doors and try to get rent from these people. And these people would get their, I guess UI back then or whatever, but they were getting their government assistance. And the first thing that they go is go buy weed, go buy beer, right? Rent, whoa, that's way down the list. Right? The problem is in Ontario, we can't have that type of tenant. That business model, to me, like obviously lots and lots of people do it and lots of people are successful with it. That's not the business model for me. Like I want my portfolio to be headache free. I don't need top cash flow or, biggest cost cash on cash or whatever metric, because I understand the business model from a different way. I know that if I can hold for the long term in a market that with very strong economic fundamentals that underpin the market, that have and I understand the long-term outlook, I also understand that the equity growth in the property through the multiplier effect, I can grow my portfolio, I could have multiple properties doing this for me, and eventually I get to the point where I'm at the magic number, 50% LTV, maybe, sell off half, pay off the other half, boom. I've never had to deal with a 100-unit whatever or a 60-unit whatever. And I think people don't realize, they're like, oh, I'll just get a property manager. My God, if it's your property manager's headache, it becomes your headache. So yeah, I think people approach real estate in the wrong way, and that's part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to change people's mindsets around it, because I don't think people fully understand real estate. And yeah, so anyway, I'm just on my soapbox right now.
It's a simple concept, but it's not easy. Simple,
not easy. For sure, 100%. And yeah, actually, it's funny. I remember Thomas Byer had a saying. It was people want simple answers to. What he used to say was, you can give very simple. I can answer your question with a very simple, incorrect answer. And like the thing is that it doesn't. I just think that a lot of people are investing in the wrong way. I honestly do. Like I think people are buying things and just like hoping for the best. And I'm like, oh my God, I could, like I admit I probably did that for my first one, but from my second property onward, I was very, very intentional about what I was doing, right? And I think that if you're not intentional about what you're doing, then you're just subject to the gods, subject to whatever, COVID, right? Like that's why, like my portfolio through COVID, I'm doing just fine. Like a lot of people are shaking in their boots. They're all like freaking the hell out and whatever. I'm like, no, I'm good, man. I'm doing pretty good. I don't know. But I don't know. I hope, like, my hope through Volition and through like this meetup is just to like change people's, or at least level up people's mindsets so that they kind of at least are conscientious about what they're doing, and they're not just kind of like buying a condo for the sake of buying a condo, or buying something because they think they got FOMO or something, right? Oh my God, if I don't buy now, I'm not going to be able. Okay, yeah, but let's be conscientious about what we're doing. So,
I think you're doing that.
oh, thanks, man. Questions. How do we get added into that WhatsApp group? Nancy Lan. So Nancy, if you are a client of Volition, meaning that you are an advisory client, you've gone through our advisory intake and you're an advisory client of ours, and or if you have completed a transaction using our services, then you have access to our private WhatsApp group. And Adam, is that Adam Norbon? It sounds like him. How you doing, Chris? Oh, hey, Adam. I identified you correctly just by your caps, your all caps. Could be any Adam. I knew it was you. How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, good, Matt. Yourself?
Not bad. I was sick this week.
Yeah, I heard you got the COVID test, right?
Yeah. People were looking at me like I was a leper.
Like your wife?
Yeah.
Like,
my wife's like, don't touch me.
Like, go away.
Yeah, I know. Go sleep in the other room.
They're a lot better now. You just book the appointment and you can just go without it's a shorter line.
Yeah. I was in there in and out in like 30, 40 minutes. It was pretty good. I've waited in line for like 3 hours before.
Oh wow. Yeah. Which assessment center did you go to?
We went to
St.
Mike's. No, St. Mike's.
Okay, so you went to the Lee Ka-shing building. Yeah, that's where I work.
That's where you work?
Yeah, I was there today.
Is it the one on Shooter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
Are you like front lines?
No, I support the front line though.
I know.
Yeah.
Not for much longer though, right? You're coming over this side, right?
Yeah, we'll see. I have 2 more exams to go.
I know we haven't chatted, but Sam's been telling me that he's been chatting with you.
Yeah, Sam's still kicking around, literally. Like hobbling around, sorry.
Hobbling around. I know, he's an old man now. We're all old. Dude, I feel so, my body, I feel so old. Like I just had my birthday. So I'm now in my last year before my 5th decade on this planet. 5th decade? No, entering my 5th decade. Whatever.
I did not think that you're closer to, yeah, wow. Well, you're aging well.
Oh God, I'm like my 5th, no, I'm 4th decade, whatever, 40, near 40. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's why I figured you're around.
No, so I'm like feeling old, man. But yeah, I know. So Sam's knee has been bothering him. But yeah, what's new with you though?
Me? I'm just like trying to enjoy some time off like next week. Just try to maybe see family just from like, sitting in a different room, open the windows kind of thing.
I know.
I'll just try to enjoy the time off and just kind of regroup for next year, I guess. just seeing like, I mean, I do see opportunities, definitely. I just don't, yeah, it's always just like with, you know, you need more money. I'll need more money.
Well, that's what Vinay's here for.
Well, it sounds like he's like capped out with that project, so I don't know.
I wanted to do 2 to 3 more, so I'm like, I'll get capped out eventually, but I'm just like future planning basically. Plus, you never know, with COVID, they might shut it down, and this thing could take 2 years, right?
So I think Rob Ford has been, I think he recognizes that construction is such a big part of the economy that I think he was just like, you know what, essential services, but construction can continue.
It only makes sense. People need places to live, right? Like, you know, I remember just picking up keys off of a lawyer, and he was literally telling me, you know, like, I hope my landlord, because he had to move out of his house to rent because his house was getting renovated. So essentially he's homeless. So
homeless lawyer?
well, yeah, I mean, you know, so the thing is that the real estate industry needs to keep going, right? If construction is taking place, that means someone is just displaced. And obviously we don't have enough homes for everybody. So it has to continue.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, okay. So Flo just asked, Matt, can you expand on what advisory client means for folks new to the chat? Why don't you unmute yourself and you can explain it, Flo.
You know what? This is why, like you said, people are afraid to put up their hand in the chat. By the way, I think you're right about the virtual backgrounds. My video's off because it's just crashing my Zoom, and I don't want to get kicked out. But isn't advisory an evolving model? It's really around. And we're looking at it actually from a business perspective on how we might evolve this model. But really, it's signing on with Volition to develop a plan of attack. And then there's also the part, and we're going to work on the messaging on this, but there's also retainer to pay that gets rebated upon a successful transaction with Volition.
Yes.
Buy your way into an exclusive club. Maybe that's how we brand it.
Yeah, that's better. Maybe Dave DeVoe's got his own exclusive club, Vinay said, so why can't we?
Yeah, it also demonstrates that people are ready to take action, right? Because I know you and Ming and other folks on the Volition team handle a lot of requests. So this is a way actually to assess someone's readiness, because this is quite time consuming. It is, I mean, everybody who invests here knows that, right? And they need a community of support. So that's why there's a lot of us regulars that come to the meetups, even if they're not Volition clients or day-to-day.
Yeah, for sure. I've done hundreds or thousands of these advisory sessions with clients. And the problem is that not everyone's going to take action. And I'm not interested in working with people who aren't going to take action. I'm not interested in working with you and having a conversation with you if you're not going to help yourself, right? Like knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only potential power, right? Like you need to actually, like, there's a book I love. It's Think and Grow Rich. And if you haven't read it, you should read it. Because it's not about, regardless of the title and how cheesy the title was, the book itself is fantastic. And part of what they talk about in there is this whole concept of knowledge is power. If knowledge is power, then all the academics would be the people who are rich and powerful and wealthy, and that's not the case though. It's people who actually who have the knowledge. But actually, here's the funny thing. He argues you don't even need the knowledge. You need access to the people who have the knowledge. What your job is to be the person with the vision and putting that vision into definite plans for action. That's what he argues. Napoleon Hill argues that in Think and Grow Rich. So we actually want to be that for you, right? That's what our mastermind is. That's what this chat, this meetup is. We feel like we have not only the knowledge, but we have the definite plans to put that into action. So we have the knowledge, which is the potential power. We have the vision, and we want to be able to to be able to imagine the possibilities of where we want to go. And we have the definite plans to get there. And we want to bring you along for that journey as well, right? It's a fantastic book. I think if you haven't read it, you should. Some of you, I guess some of you have already. Ty, it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Funny enough, it was written during the Great Depression. And a lot of the references in there are very old, and it's very, very dated. And they talk about, some stuff the references, but the content there is timeless though. As much as it's dated, being written 80 some odd years ago, the concepts there, it is the granddaddy of all. If you can imagine this whole concept of personal development and personal leadership, this category of like the self-help category didn't exist before this book. This book was the original. This book actually spawned that entire category of personal leadership and personal development. So that is one I would recommend. The other one I'd recommend is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That one is also very good. As much as it's dry as hell, the title, the book itself is actually very good too. Those 2 books I always recommend. Oh, you asked any other book recommendations? Yep, that's the other one I'd recommend. All right, are we done? Yeah. We've only got the stragglers now.
I think people are tapping out.
These are the people.
The same.
These are the people who are left are the people that turned off their mic, turned off their video, went off, had a beer, went and took a shower. They didn't even know that the meetup's done already.
Super quick question. Very quick question. The Masterclass, can you just give a little bit more info on what's going to be taught?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we take you, we're going to start from basically first principles. I think where a lot of these gurus and a lot of these education seminars, they jump right in. They're going to be like, okay, let's go look at let's go analyze a property. We are going to analyze a property. That's going to be the last thing we do. It's at the very back, because I'm like, how the hell are you going to analyze a property or determine if a property is good or not if you don't know any of the fundamentals? So we actually strip everything back down to first principles, and we want to help you understand what is it that, so for example, the question people always ask, oh, what property should I buy? Should I buy a condo? Or I saw some other questions. Maybe it was your question. Should I buy pre-construction, right? Or other stuff we get. Oh, isn't Toronto too expensive? Isn't it risky? If you're asking those types of questions, the reason you're asking those questions is because of just a lack of understanding of the fundamentals. So we're actually going to go back to those fundamentals. What drives it? We should be asking, what market do I invest in? The question you need to be asking yourself, for example, is what are the economic fundamentals that underpin and drive any market, right? And once you understand those things, for example, and you understand how, the relationship between GDP and job growth and population growth and vacancy rates and rent rates and then housing prices, once you understand that relationship, then you'll have a better sense of, okay, should I invest in this market or not, right? And then the other thing I get is, well, where do I buy? Toronto's a big place, where do I buy? Right? So some of the things we talk about is what is the single most desirable feature when looking at real estate. And then that will help you determine where to buy, right? So once you understand some of these things, then you can answer these questions to yourself. We do eventually get to those answers, and we apply these fundamentals to Toronto to help you understand, ultimately, you're going to buy this type of property in this type of location. It's going to cost this much, and this is how much you should get in rent. And this is the type of business model that you can employ for this type of property. We'll get to all of that. But that's not the question you should be asking, right? The question you should be asking is more around, what are the fundamentals that drive real estate? And once you understand that, then I'm not interested. It's this whole like, I don't want to just give you fish, right? I don't want to give you fish. You're hungry? I don't want to give you fish. I want to teach you how to fish, right? Because ultimately, I don't want to, the reason is because you need to understand a lot of different things. And it's not just around the market. You also have to understand how real estate works as an asset class. Because once you understand how real estate works as an asset class, then you'll be better equipped to answer questions like, favorite topic of people at a party, right? I'm investing in this mutual fund or this EFT. And it's always like equities versus stocks. Sorry, no, equities versus real estate. Right? That's always a favorite topic of conversation. But I have these conversations. The reason that the people can't have intelligent conversations about this is because people can't actually compare apples to apples. People look at things like cap rates. Cap rate is not a measure that I can use to compare whether I should buy real estate or stocks or equities. Cap rates is not one. Cash flow is not one, right? Without truly understanding how real estate works as an asset class, how can you possibly compare against a mutual fund, right? So those are some of the things that we're going to get into so you can better understand how real estate works as an asset class, mainly because real estate investing is not investing. Real estate investing is not investing. It's the stupidest statement I've ever said, right? Like, how can real estate investing be not investing? It's because real estate investing is not investing because you're not actually investing. Investing means I go buy a share of Google or Apple or whatever, right? That's an investor. I am buying a business. When I'm investing in real estate, I'm buying a business. And without understanding that business, how can I be successful in that business, right? So if I understand all the fundamentals and I understand how it works as an asset class, I'm going to reach a point where the times are going to get tough. Shit's going to hit the fan. Things are not going to go exactly as you planned. You're going to have a problem tenant. You're going to have a leaky basement. You're going to have X, Y, Z. And you're going to be tempted to throw in the towel, right? We've all been there. Chris is nodding his head because he probably has a raccoon in his roof right now, right? This happens to all of us. And you're just like, why?
It's your fault because you said it.
It's because I'm manifesting it.
Yeah, it's like you say it happens, and then like I'll send you the bill. It's like vermin raccoon removal services.
But
talk about the different formats that we're trying out too, right? It's actually going to be a mix of you and Ming talking in a pre-recorded format. There's some questions on the side chat about it right now. So we are using a new platform that's designed for conferences called Hopin. And it's going to be a mix of actually quality studio recording from Ming and Matt. And why we're doing that is one, since you guys know them very well, it's going to be time boxed within the 7 hours. Because parts of it
are trying to say, Flo.
And then the other is that what that was is Ming and Matt's time and the other team members actually answer questions along the way. So that way, instead of trying to present and answer questions, there'll be a much better quality of conversation. We're also having various case studies of different properties that are available, turnkey renovations. We're also having guest speakers on the mortgage front of Vine around, so, an extension of something like tonight. And then we're also having panelists as well. So for those of you that attended last year, we're actually doing the same thing longer. So people get featured a little bit longer than last year, and hearing from actually clients that are doing it so you can see how they've been along their investing journey.
Yeah, actually, I think last time we just kind of threw 3 of you up there. I can see 2 of you right now. The third one dropped off. But I think this year we actually have more of a theme around our investors that we're featuring. One is first-time home buyer. So a lot of us are in this boat, right? Buying my first property, what should I buy? And then you can see what she says, right? She or he. It's a she. Or they. And another one is an aspirational investor, one who had been investing for a while, met Volition, recognized some of the value in what we were saying, dipped dipped his toe in, and then after he saw the results, went all in. And so an aspirational investor, insofar as he's now, converted his entire portfolio over, he's grown his portfolio massively with Volition, kind of quarterbacking everything for him. Truth be told, he's got a larger, these people, like some of our speakers are going to have larger portfolios than I have, right? Like, and this is another thing. We were just talking about this, Justin. Like people love to say, "Oh, I've got like 40 doors," or that's like notches on your belt for some reason. Like people, I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what people don't realize is it's not about number of doors or number of properties. It's about equity and net worth. And the reason is because, again, if you understand how real estate works as an asset class and the mechanisms through which you build wealth in real estate, I'm like, I could sit here, I could be like, okay, well, great, you have 80 doors or whatever, but if you might not have much equity, or they're low value properties or whatever, like for me, I've got actually fairly substantial equity across my entire portfolio. I could right now liquidate half my portfolio, pay off the mortgage the other half, probably just live off my cash flow for the rest of my life. I could probably do that right now, right? And maybe we will. Like this is conversations we're having with my wife right now, right? But the reason I can do that is because of equity and because of net worth, not because of the number of doors. I'd have quite a low number of doors actually, and it's not about the number of doors. It's about equity and about net worth, right? People don't realize the relationship between equity and cash flow. I can trade one for the other. I can trade 100%. Equity for cash flow right now, right?
Yeah.
People don't understand those relationships. That's what we're going to try to enlighten you with. That's the kind of stuff, because this is stuff that no one else teaches you. You go to your real estate seminar, they're going to go, okay, well, you go to Keyspire or whatever, and some of these other Scott McGillivray or whatever, and I already know what they teach you. It's not this. And the reason that we're creating something new here is because I recognize, the whole Volition team recognizes that this doesn't exist out there. No one talks about this, right? People talk about zero money down investing. They'll talk about wholesaling. They'll talk about US-based strategies. They'll talk about, all this other stuff, but no one gets into, like, everyone loves to talk about the acquisition of properties too, but no one actually walks you through the entire investment journey. There's an acquisition phase, there's a hold phase, there's a divestment phase. All has to be mapped to, this is a journey that needs to be mapped onto you and your personal life situation. We need to create that plan, create that strategy. That's what advisory is. So I saw Flo's message here. What's advisory? That's what advisory is. We're gonna map that plan out for you and for your situation. So anyway, my wife's messaging me. I think I was supposed to be done an hour ago.
I think there's another very insightful, very valuable session you guys put on, as always.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
My brother. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for listening to me rant.
Extra support down, Matt. So this is a holiday social right here. So
the reason I stuck around is because I haven't seen Chris and some of these other people. This is the only time I get to see our clients and our friends. So all right. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
All right, guys.
Yeah, guys.
Happy holidays. Don't see you. We'll talk to you later.